All right.
Welcome back to the Insights of All Trades podcast. We are on 20-something now. We lost count.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe 25. It doesn't matter. But I got my Rigging It Gear mask on. So, actually, I'm not going to keep this on because neither of us have COVID. But
we hope not.
We hope not.
I've been coughing in this guy's face all day.
He has been, and I haven't been. I've been wearing my mask when he's doing it. But anyways, Rigging It Gear is making masks and also fanny packs and all sorts of other stuff. I have a hammock coming in pretty soon that Jacob made me, and he was just asking for my shipping address the other day. So I'm looking forward to that. So shout out to Rigging It Gear, the one and only sponsor to Insights of All Trades. Anything you want to add to that?
No, hit them up at the Instagram handle is at Rigging It Gear, and I think the website is riggingit.co or
it's
something like that.
r-i-g.co.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so hit them up, get something, and I think you can just like message Jacob too if you want like a custom thing. Like I know they're not like mass producing hammocks, but I texted him. I was like, hey dude, would love to have a Rigging It Gear hammock, and he said like, all right, like anything specific you want done for it, and he's been making it. So yeah, and I know he made you like a specific pack for your Machu Picchu trip. That
he tailors things very well, and he has a bunch of weird distances under his belt, ranging from like an AT through hike to crazy miles for a day hike, and he'll tailor packs to whatever you want it made for.
So, today's little quote is from Mad Dog Mattis, right?
Oh yeah, from General James Mattis.
Yeah, so I don't know, I guess I feel like he's not really like a super controversial person, but maybe because he was under the Trump administration and then left. But so no, nothing political here, but his so the quote is cynicism is cowardice, right?
Oh yeah.
So take it away. What do you think there?
What I think that he means by that is that, or what I think he's alluding to rather, is that it takes more courage, I guess, to find the good in things. And I don't think he means it in a way that's like, there is no bad in the world and so on. I think he would be the last person to probably have that perspective. But beyond that, to see all of the bad and still search for good and know that there is actually good on the other side of the darkness that we all have to contend with in our own unique way, I think it's something that's special. And it kind of hidden behind that message of calling someone a coward for being cynical. I think that's what that means.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of guilty of taking that too far, actually. Like, there'll be times when something will go wrong and I'll be like, oh, well, at least like this didn't happen, or like it could have been worse in this way. And I think sometimes taking that too far is also pretty annoying to people because, sometimes people just want to be told that, that sucks, or like that's not great, But if I'm always like, well, at least like, look at the bright side of things, blah, 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 that gets a little annoying too. But I totally agree with the whole sentiment because that's pretty much how I always am. So yeah. So today's guest, we have Brennan Paden on the show. He's in the Air Force, in the Air National Guard. He is in the security force, so we talk a lot about his Air Force career so far, and he's also pretty into powerlifting and a lot of other like crazy hobbies. We didn't actually get to talk about a lot of them, like archery and motocross, things like that, but he's an all-around pretty awesome dude, and I think you guys are going to enjoy this one. Anything you want to add before we kick it off?
Yeah, it's a fun episode. I try to do my service as the lay person and break things down because, as someone that's outside of the military, unlike Nick and Brennan, there's a lot of things that can go right over my head, and I would imagine it feels that way for a lot of other non-service members as well. So hopefully I help some people navigate the language there a little bit, but just speaking for myself as a person that's not in the military, it's still interesting to listen to, about all of the dynamics, not only within the Air Force, but just, talking about tactical things like we talk about, like, the sites that are used and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And getting into little details. To me, it's exciting.
And we've both known Brennan for a while. We played soccer with him in high school and everything, and goes pretty far back. So this kind of conversation, it flows really well, and I think it felt like we could have just kept talking for like another 2-3 hours, and around like 2 hours 15 minutes or so we were like, okay, we do have stuff to do today. So I think I think you guys will like this one a lot, and stay tuned for it.
Welcome to Insights of All Trades podcast with Nick and Cole. This is where we talk with people we meet along our journeys through medicine, military service, sports, education, and beyond. We hope you enjoy.
Brennan Paden, welcome, man.
It's good to be here, guys.
Yeah. So just this past summer, Brennan and I were both in San Antonio, Texas, for different military training. But sadly, due to the coronavirus, we couldn't even see each other at all, even though we were, a couple miles away.
I think it was like less than 10 miles or something like that. Super close.
So you were at Lackland Air Force Base, right?
Yep.
And I was at Fort Sam Houston. And normally, everyone says that San Antonio is like this great city, a lot of cool stuff to do. There's like a river walk and all sorts of stuff. But we're both out there, and coronavirus is like in full swing. So we're both locked down to our bases, can't do anything. I couldn't even go over to Lackland. He couldn't come over to Fort Sam. It was not ideal. But
No.
Tell us a little bit about your experience out there at Lackland and what you were doing there.
So I was at basically Lackland doing, it's called Combat Arms, which is, it's Combat Arms and Maintenance, and our acronym for it's CADM. And basically we do all the weapon maintenance and training and everything for basically like all Air Force personnel and everything. So I was down there for the instructor school for it. So for me it was cool because like I've like grown up shooting and stuff like that. So it was kind of like, I always thought like, man, it would be cool to get like paid to like shoot and like mess around with like guns and stuff. And then here I am getting paid to, we don't always get to shoot, but we get to teach people how to shoot. I actually was really surprised how much I enjoyed like the teaching aspect of it, because as far as like public speaking, it was never like a strong suit of mine or anything, but like getting up in front of people and teaching people about stuff I know about was actually like a lot easier and like more welcoming than I thought it was going to be. But so I was down there for about 3 months, a little over 3 months, and we just like went over the full swing of like everything that I could come across teaching anyone, or like what anyone else could. And it had like different procedures and stuff vary for base. So like, you know that with certain bases will use different weapon systems and different things that like other ones like either won't have or just in general won't need. So for us, we're kind of small, so we don't have like a super huge arsenal of stuff we have, but for the most part it's like pretty basic, like M4, M9 training for our security forces guys, or just for regular base populace who we just basically spin up and get ready to go before they deploy and stuff like that. But it's a lot of fun. It's pretty neat, but kind of glad I'm just getting into it too. So it's I've only actually taught like a live class one time, but I've instructed on the range a little bit through the past year, and it's a cool thing to be a part of for sure.
So you joined the Air Force when?
March 31st of 2016.
Okay. And then what did you go in as originally?
So for like career field?
Yeah, like
so
MOS.
Our career fields are mine's security forces, but we cover, there's like different, I don't really want to say like different entities inside it, but different like shred outs for different job stuff. So like I still do like a traditional standard security forces like mission for like base security, resource protection, and law enforcement. And then we do, in addition to that, we do combat arms. There's different sections of schools you can go to. So like one's like called Raven. It's basically just like a flyaway security. So they do like aircraft security for aircraft in deployed environments and stuff like that. There's Dagger, which stands for Deployed Aircraft Ground Response Element. That's like, there's less than like 200 or 300 of those guys in the Air Force, and we're actually one of the 4 bases that gets slotted to send people to that. So it's pretty much similar as far as flyaway security goes, but it's for more, I guess you could say, like more hazardous areas and like stuff like that. But that's kind of like a smaller thing. And then you have combat arms, which is what I do, and then what I think every Air Force base like in the entire Air Force has combat arms. And as of now, that's manned solely by security forces. And I know there's talk and discussion of opening it up to other career fields, because there's more people in the Air Force that can teach and shoot well than just security forces guys. It's not like just limited to that. So they kind of want to open it up, especially because the combat arms career field is like, it's low manned right now. It's like somewhere like around 60 or 70% of what we should have. So it's kind of struggling a little bit. But
so did you have to request to go become an instructor, or is that something that's expected of you?
So what happened with me was, at any time I could have like requested to go to the school, but so I'm in the Air National Guard. So like typically with like Air National Guard or reserves, you have there's your full-time force, your guys that like are full-time, so they're either federal technicians or active guard reserve. And what that is, it's basically you work in the Air National Guard, but you're on an active duty status. So and then there's some small variances between like that and actual active duty, as far as like not pay, but like as far as like status stuff and like what type of order you're on. But essentially it's kind of the same thing. And then so I worked there like when I'll kind of like backtrack to when I first started. I first started like once I got back from like my technical training, like after basic training, which was 3.5 months in Lackland also. So I spent plenty of time in Lackland. Basic training was there too. But so pretty much I got back from there, and like I did my like OJT like at the base for like 2.5 months. And the one day I was
What's
leaving,
OJT?
On the job training.
Gotcha.
So pretty much after any time like someone comes back from tech school, whatever their career field is, they'll do like OJT, or like seasoning days is kind of like a slang they call it. But so you go and do that, learn your shop, learn your responsibilities, kind of learn your job. And then a lot of people from there, once they finish that, they'll do their 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks out of the year, which is the traditional like National Guard, Air National Guard standard that like a lot of people do. But so I did my 2 months of OJT, and then like at the end of it, the one guy was like, "Hey man, you like working here, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty cool." And he was like, "You should apply to be a temporary technician." And what that is just for like a year tour, you just work at like the base full time, pretty much doing what I had been doing for like on the job training. And they were like, "Yeah, you should put in an application for it." So I was like, "Okay, it's like pretty decent money." I was like, I'll go ahead and do that." And then like I did that for 8 months. They were like, "Hey," it's just like the butterfly effect. I did that for 8 months, and then after that they were like, "Hey, there's 360 days of active duty orders that you can go on." And for me, as a federal technician, a GS6 was paying a little bit less than what I would have been making on an active duty order. So I was like, well, it's another year, sure, why not? And then shortly after that, they were like, "Well, your year's almost up. There's a GS8 full-time federal technician job coming down. Like, you should apply for that." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do that." Applied for that, got that, and by the time I actually started that, like, it was from the time I put my application into the time I actually started the job was, and it's funny because like there's all these statuses and stuff and like different pay scales, but like essentially the whole time I was doing the exact same thing. And like 2 months into that, they're like, "Hey, there's like 3 new like AGR slots that are opening up because people were like retiring, so like the jobs just trickle down." And I was like, "All right, I'll apply for that." Got one of those, and then it was slotted as a CADM position, so I had to go to CADM school within 360 days of like actually starting the job. So they're like, I was planning on going anyway, but pretty much what that whole big long story is, I sort of ended up in that AGR position. They're like, "Well, you got to go to CADM school." And I was like, "Well, all right, we'll go and do that." And so pretty much everything from the start of my Air Force career to where I'm at currently has all come from me just either not being able to say no, or just being like willing to be like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it. Yeah. Come on, send me, let's go." But so pretty much that led me into where I'm at now. And then I mean, a few people that just do like the 1 weekend a month thing, they're also have like gone down to CADM school, so they help us with like ranges and stuff, and instructing like on drill weekends when we have a lot of people to like train and qualify. But for the most part, I still do the combat arms role, and then I still do the traditional security forces role. So it's kind of cool because I get like a mix of both. Whereas at like a big active duty base, if your combat arm, and it's not the case every time, but most of the time, if you're combat arms, and that's what you're doing. You're not doing any like traditional like resource protection or law enforcement stuff. You're just doing that. And I wanted to be able to do both, because for me it's like I don't like getting slotted in one thing and they're like, you can do this, but like this is no longer your responsibility. To me it's like but I can do that, so I want to. So it's kind of like, I don't know, I just kind of go with the flow down there, and as stuff comes up they're like, you want to go to this? I'm like, yeah, let's go, come on.
Yeah. So Cole, you're gonna have to be like the lay person, whatever, because I'm sure there's a lot that you're saying
all the stuff I just said that no one understood.
Yeah, so like if to make it like more, non-military friendly too, Cole, you're gonna have to jump in.
Yeah, so if I was a 5-year-old,
okay,
which I almost am mentally right now after being so acutely underslept,
which I feel like I hear from you every time I see you.
Yeah, like, maybe I just need to get tougher, I guess.
You're just like, I'm always underslept. But you can read that book,
Why We Sleep by Buddy Matthew Walker, which is hanging out behind the camera over there. And then maybe someday I'll show up actually protecting my sleep. But aside from that, and me being a big baby and not getting tougher, my understanding...
Cole is the least toughest person.
One of these days I'll learn. And one day I'll watch enough Joe Rogan podcasts that I'll get tougher. Anyway, I digress. So you go in 2016, you join SF, which security forces for Air Force. Hopefully you don't get bashed by the other armed forces for not being special forces.
There's jokes.
Like, hey guys, I'm SF.
Before you get into that, just because with our new uniforms now that we're wearing the OCPs, we actually wear a patch on our shoulder that says SF on it. So like, I like constantly like people will be like, oh, you like I'll be at like Sheets or something getting gas. People are like, dude, are you special forces? And I'm like, no. It's like it's not the same.
Well, and so for those that don't know, the OCPs are like your workday uniform. Basically, it's like the camo, jacket, long pants, and stuff. And the Air Force and the Army wear the same thing. It's just the patches are like different colors. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times I think Army and Air Force get confused out in like Sheets and stuff like that all the time. Anyways, yeah. So that kind of adds to it, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely.
So my 5-year-old friendly bullet point recap. You go in 2016, under the umbrella of security forces, you go into like combat arms, which is CADM. What was it?
It's Combat Arms Training and Maintenance is the acronym. We love our acronyms. Everything's an acronym.
Somewhere in that timeline, and I don't think I got to talk to you about this yet, maybe because you're too humble to talk about it, like to bring it up on your own, but I think through talking to one of your brothers, they talked about like you had won like some marksman award essentially, or something like that. I don't know what the verbiage is for it. Could you tell us about like whatever that was, and how like did that change your trajectory at all, like within combat arms?
Okay, so specifically that was just like that was just a course I went to that it didn't like necessarily affect my path of like where I was going with it, but so it was sometime like last year in like August, our superintendent came to me and asked me, he was like, hey, we have a slot for a designated marksman course in I want to say it was in Fort Wayne, Indiana was where it was at, and then we actually went to Michigan to shoot for it. But he was like, do you want to go? And I was like, absolutely, I want to go. Like, another thing, like, I didn't know specifically what it was, but to me, it sounded cool. So I was just like, it was only like a week long. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go. And so I went out to Fort Wayne in the end of September of last year. And basically, we spent 5 days learning about ballistics, range estimation, and then it was all centered mostly around like the Trigagon ACOG, which it's basically just like a 4-power optic that mounts onto, it mounts onto like, you can put it on really anything, but it gets used a lot in the armed forces for like the M4, M16. I think the Marines still use M16s, so I don't really know, but they so basically I was out there and we just spent 2 days in the classroom just covering all of the material, like how to properly like estimate range with the ACOG optic, different techniques you can use to range estimate, like just like visually looking at it, and then like using mil dot reticle to like actually like measure something in milliradians, and then just like do the quick math on like what that would translate to in yard or meters, I guess. But
how do you do that with it? As a quick aside, but I am interested, like especially if you're eyeballing it, like.
So there's a few things that like techniques. The ones that stuck out to me that I used the most for it was there's the football field methods, because a football field's 100 yards, or the halving method. So if there's something that like, so like for the football field method, for example, if like I see something like way out there, you literally just look at it and think like, well, I could squeeze 1, 2, maybe 2.5 to 3 football fields between that target or that whatever that is and me. So that's that one. And then for the halving method, you take a range that you know for something shorter. It's like, okay, that's 350 meters. That looks about double, so it's probably close to around like 700, or like between 600 700. And honestly, whenever you're in terms of like long range ballistics, if you're shooting like, for example, like a 5.56 round, 50 meters in terms of like bullet drop is like, it's pretty minuscule for the most part. So it's like, by no means do you have to be exact with any of that stuff, but we didn't really use that like for practical like exercise when we were shooting and stuff. Mostly we used like either the ACOG for ranging, which has like the reticle inside has different hash marks. So basically what you would use for the ACOG to range is like, there's your different size hash marks. So like for 100 meters, I mean for 100 meters doesn't really matter, because just anything within 300, your bullet drop is really only like, it's pretty small. So if there was something like say 500 meters, like you would take the hash mark, and if it like, for example, well, I mean they're used for combat optics. So if you're looking at a person at 500 meters, but you don't know that, you go ahead and you just take that hash mark and you just lay it across the shoulders. And granted, it's not exact, because like if someone's standing like slightly cannon to you or something like that, you can't know for sure, but the general,
or if the person in your sights is previous guest Taylor Foster,
or it may absolute,
if there's some percent error.
Yeah. And basically, so you're looking at that size, and then you just like measure it, because the universal average for most people, it's around like 19 to 20 inches for like shoulder to shoulder. So it's like if it lines up and measures, you're close, like close enough for the most part. And then with milliradians, which is far more accurate than the other two, you basically look through an optic and it has a reticle in it that has hash marks for how many mils, or milliradians, mils just like a short abbreviation for it, is like the measurement. So if I go and measure at 100 meters, like, or not 100, just like 450 or something like that, and I'm like, okay, this is this many mils. You take the number of mils so you have to know your target size sort of, but if you know that it's 19, so like you measure something, or for example, we were shooting at like steel plates that were 40 inches tall and 20 inches wide, so about like an average like human like upper torso. So you go and you measure it, and it's like, all right, that's this many mils at 400 or whatever distance it is, and then you go and you multiply your known number of inches times 25.4, and then you divide it by the number of mils, and then it gets you like you're very close.
This will be in the test.
Jose, how's that sleep deprived brain go? I'm just gonna move this mic quick. I think it's I think it was being wonky.
Gotcha. But yeah, that's so pretty much for the most part, like that's your more accurate one. A little more time consuming, but like far more precise. And granted, we were shooting at steel targets that were at a fixed distance that we just didn't know. We had all the time in the world to range it. They weren't shooting back at us. So it's,
thankfully,
yeah. So it's kind of like real world. Are you going to sit there? And if you have the time, maybe. If not, use your ACOG, be a little quicker. Or do you just, I think he's this many football fields away, kind of like something like that. But
so who decides, or how do you decide like who gets what sight and stuff? So I know like at least I've heard if you get deployed, you can kind of just put whatever you want on your weapon, right?
For the Air Force, it's I'm not sure how like okay. I know like the special operations community is like they can use basically whatever they want. I've seen some like pretty interesting setups that are definitely not like up like within regs, but they kind of operate under their own terms for sure. But for us, our like traditional like stateside optic is just like the M68 Comp 2, which is like just a really basic red dot sight. Like it's I don't want to like talk down on it because it's like a good super durable optic, but it's really, really basic. And then what you can use is a lot of security forces wise, like at like nuke and missile fields and like areas where there's like a lot longer ranges and stuff that they would possibly have to cover. They'll use the ACOG, which is that 4-powered magnified optic and stuff. But for the most part, our M4 optics, we use like the M68 or we use the ACOG. And it's kind of, depending on where you're at, like you can kind of like pick and choose which one you want. Since I went to that school, I have an ACOG on mine just because it's, I don't know, I like it, I'm familiar with it, but I just prefer it over like the 68. But as far as like deployed environment, it's kind of depends on like what command you're falling under. If it's a special operations commander, it's like just a traditional MAGCOM that's like, which is just like basically like where it that was a great explanation of that. Basically it's like who you fall under and like who you're operating with. So I guess my question is like with all the different like the training on the different optics, where does that come into play? Like I guess real world, like is it just depending on what scenario and situation you're in a deployed environment? Yep. Or and that the thing with security forces is like our specific mission at our base is like we have like our dagger mission, which is our primary one. So we mostly just deploy like small 5-man teams to different locations to do flyaway security or like basically like not executive protection, but just like TSD missions and stuff.
What's TSD?
So that's I forget what the acronym.
What's like the gist of the?
It's basically just like small protection operations for like just like people or like transporting things and stuff like that.
Okay.
But so they'll do that, and they do a whole bunch of other stuff. I haven't been to like the school and training for Dagger, but there's like a whole big umbrella that they fall underneath that I don't know. I know like a very, very small amount. I just have like the outside view of it. But and then typically we don't like a lot of places will deploy like a whole bunch of security forces members to do like installation and like base security over in like deployed environments and stuff. And it's not so much now. I don't want to say they don't do it because I know some do, but like as far as like outside the wire, like convoy and stuff like that, that's something that falls like kind of under the security forces umbrella, but it's definitely not like a big primary like mission of ours. And I know like some guys go over and do it and like, but our guys specifically, we don't really do that just because we're small and have like a very specific like mission set that we fall under.
Before we bookmark the scopes and stuff, my final question: Have either of you guys played Call of Duty Warzone?
I haven't.
No.
Okay.
I've seen people play it though.
Bear with me.
Yeah.
So there's an option for an attachment that you unlock where you can have like essentially an ACOG in front and a red dot behind it. And then if you want, you can just flip down the ACOG and use the red dot. Is there things that are equivalent to that where it's like I want to run an ACOG and whatever that special type of, or not special type, but like the the standard red dot is that you use? Can you have like both equipped, if you will?
So
and then like use both on an M4 or something like that.
We don't specifically. Well, the one thing that we have that would be kind of comparable to that is the latest version of the ACOG is like a quick detach mount, and then on top of it, it's Trigicon RMR, which is like just like a tiny like micro red dot. So you kind of have both there. So it's like your ACOG's like your primary, and then if you just like pick your head up a little, your RMR's like on top of it. So you kind of have both there. But as far as like being able to like flip it down, it's like we don't have anything.
Okay, I got
like that. Cool. There's definitely stuff like that out there. It's just not something that we like use or have in our inventory.
I gotcha. If it's stacked on top of each other, it may be more efficient than like having to reach up, flip it down.
It might be. Personally, I've never used like the little arm. I just think it's kind of, because for anything like really close, like for like training and stuff, it's like anything within like 7 to 10 meters anyway. It's like you're probably a lot better off just like canting your weapon to the side and like honestly eyeballing it, as far as like because whenever you get in like a really small room or something, it's like you don't want to be like sucked into your optic, like looking through like something like this big and like, all right, this is what I can see. But if you're like kind of just like both eyes open, have it tilted down to the side, you can just see like all of your surroundings. You're not like sucked into. That's like one thing with like everyone always talks about with red dots is like keeping both eyes open and like using it that way as opposed to like focusing in on and looking through. People say like the toilet paper roll, because really that's about the size of the thing you're looking through. So you can't like imagine like walking into a room and like just looking through one small thing. You're like, where is everything?
I've heard people echo the same things with like shooting handguns, because I've been shooting a handgun. Like I have not shot one until like the past year or so, until I wanted to get my concealed carry permit. So I was like started shooting, and people were instructing me to like not have one eye, you know, totally closed, like looking down the iron sights and so on. That sounds like kind of the same theme, if you will. I don't know if that's even right, so I could just be like misleading everyone.
I mean, stuff like that honestly comes down to like preference. I mean, as far as like, do I think there's a right and wrong for like going into small rooms and stuff? Like, yeah, you should most definitely have two eyes open and be like looking over top of your weapon and not like down the sights with one. But like for like general pistol shooting, like if you're more comfortable with one, like, and you're just like shooting paper, shooting targets or whatever, like heck yeah, because you can focus in a lot more with like just looking at one. But like if you're more comfortable with both eyes open, like I personally am, that's how I shoot. I mean, really anything like archery or like pistol, rifle, whatever. It's like I just run both eyes open, because maybe it's because my eyes aren't good, so I can't see all that well if I just have one.
Is one eye like slightly like not closed, but like one eyelid like a little more closed? It's so hard for me to keep both
I feel like
fully
it'd throw
open.
Me off, like if I was I'm
you
just
know
not
what I
good
mean?
at shooting
I think I know.
in
I think I know
general,
what you mean. I know like some people like will kind of like squint the one, but to me, I'm just like sitting here. If I'm trying to like squint one eye, I'm like, I feel like I'm putting so much effort into like, I gotta hold this eye closed, and as soon as I like hold this one closed, like I feel like this one just like my vision just gets weird. So I just run both open. For me, it's easier. For other people who can see and stuff, those lucky guys, they or girls, they just like, I don't know if they're more comfortable that way. And preference comes down to a lot of it, because like even just like the little experience that I do have instructing, it's like everybody's different, like 100%. You got people with like super huge hands that like their hands, like it looks like their fingers wrap around like a pistol or something like 3 times, and then you have people that like have like really really small hands that can barely grab. You gotta like basically find what's comfortable for them, and then just like work with what you got, because I mean that applies to anything. You can't you just gotta work within what your abilities and what your limitations are. But
right, I derailed us so many times. Did you have an aside?
I was just gonna say I'm gonna need your help at some point, because I didn't qualify in San Antonio.
No.
Well, so only like 10% of our class did, because we got one day to zero, and then the next day was like to qualify. And on the zeroing day, we only had like each they had it split up into platoons like based on alphabetical order. And each platoon was only allotted a certain amount of ammunition for it.
Yep.
And we like ran out really fast, so pretty much nobody zeroed their rifle. And then the next day was qualifying day, and no one had like a zeroed rifle, so we're just shooting everywhere. And like 10% of people qualified. It didn't count because of like coronavirus and stuff. They were like, I guess this doesn't count, because we were supposed to have like 5 days on the range or something before we would do that, but everything got cut. But anyways, I'm gonna need some help, because I'm a terrible shot, and also my weapon wasn't zeroed. But
that doesn't help.
It doesn't help. But also, I'm really bad with those like the little, I don't know what even those sights are, the little like flip up thing that's got a little circle in it, and then
the backup iron sights.
Yeah. Those they're tough, because I always put my face in like a different spot every time, and that's like not what you're supposed to do, obviously.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure, we can go shoot some stuff sometimes.
How do you zero like a weapon? Is that like the equivalent of like whoopsie? Is that the equivalent of like shooting in like
it's the same concepts. Pretty much, you just like, like if you're like just throwing like a brand new sight on, and you go out and shoot, like wherever it's lining up is where it's gonna hit. So like most basically just have like, I know like we typically zero, and I think the Army's the same, which like 25 meters is like the standard.
Just have like a little grid paper basically.
Yep, and it literally even says on the paper like if you're hitting here, it's like move it this many clicks over to get it to here, and then like move it this many clicks up to. It's like super easy, but if you only have like a couple rounds per person, it takes a little bit to like walk it in. Or if you just get really lucky and you shoot it the first time and it's really, really close, that's also really nice. But
plus, it didn't help. It was like 100 and some degrees, and those
you're sweaty.
Yeah, and those M4s get hot, man, when they're out in the sun. Jeez, because like you have to lay it. You know, you're waiting for your turn, so you have like your weapon like pointed downrange, just like laying in the grass basically while you're waiting to go, and it's just like the sun's just beating on this like black metal.
Dude, if you're in the Air Force, you just have a covered range. You just be sitting in the shade shooting.
That sounds nice.
Before I derailed us 5 times over, we were talking about so like you're out in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Oh yeah, I forgot we were talking about that.
Okay, so you do your training with your ACOG, and you know you're learning all these tactics essentially for figuring out how far away things are that you're shooting at, and then where do you go from there?
So basically, once we did our 2 days of class and we learned our basically like ballistics, range estimation, all that stuff, and then we went out and typically a lot of like standard shooting courses or qualifications in like the Air Force. I'm not sure how the Army is, but I think it's probably similar. They're like really strict with stuff, and it's like really like high maintenance. They're like, all right, this is gonna go this way. You're gonna shoot it this time. It's gonna happen like that. But like it was weird. They just like were like, all right, you guys got all the material. You got your like everyone's got their like gear and stuff. Ammo's in the back of the trailer. Grab 300 rounds and then go get your dopes for all like 20 targets that are out there. We were like, all right, cool. So it was just like it was a pretty laid back course for the most part. And then basically how it worked is I think there was like 24 of us in the class, so each person got partnered up, and then we would just go out as like we had our shooter and we had our spotter. So basically what your spotter's doing for you is he's like once like we went out and we got all of our ranges for the targets. So then what the spotter would do is once we had all of our ranges, we would go ahead and we would shoot, and like you can actually watch like the trace of the bullet as it's flying. So what your spotter's doing for you, because when you're looking through a 4-power optic at 600 meters, like you can't see anything. Like basically if you're shooting at steel targets, you're just waiting for like a sound impact to hear. But so what your spotter is doing for you is he's watching where your round's flying and like where it's impacting, so he can see like where it impacts on the ground. If you miss, they call that splash, just like where it hits, because like if you hit the dirt, it kind of like puffs up. Sometimes it does. If it's like wet and stuff, it's more difficult because you can't see it. But like in that instance, or if you don't have a backdrop, you're watching like the trace. You can actually watch the bullet. It's not like vapor. It's like, I forget how exactly it works, but you can kind of like watch the trail where it goes up, and you can literally just watch it arc. It's actually like really, really cool. So it's like,
so are these like special tracer bullets?
Nope, these are just like standard rounds. So even like regular like hunting rifle rounds like would do the same thing. It's like there'd just be like a little bit of trace that you can like follow with it. It's kind of hard to see. It like takes a little bit to like get in the zone to actually see it. It's pretty cool. It's pretty neat. But so even if you miss and you don't have a backdrop, or there's like no splash, you couldn't see anything, you can still see like, all right, you went up over the right shoulder. So it's like, and our rifles were zeroed, but I mean it's like out in Michigan where we were shooting, it was windy, and if you're getting like full value winds, like winds at like 90 degrees, like at 600 meters with I think there were 69 grain 223 or 5.56 rounds, like they're blowing quite a bit. Like my hold off at 600 meters, like once we had our dope, was like I was holding like 6 or 7 feet to the left, and it was like you'd shoot and it would end up like coming out and then going back into it, just because it was like arcing that much. It
sounds like putting and like mini golf.
A lot of people
you have a big slope.
Yeah, a lot of people compare like golf and like long range shooting to like similar. It's like a similar concept. It's like you got to play the wind, you got to like play the environment and stuff. But so basically, like we got our dopes. We both shot shooter spotter, and then from there we went and once like we shot for 2 or 3 days, we did like different various exercises, like different engagement techniques and stuff like that.
Are you with the same partner every time?
Yep. So I had this. Fortunately, the guy that I was with, like, he'd done long range shooting, like for his own personal like time and stuff, and then I do the same thing. So it was like we kind of had like a little bit of like a step up, just because like everyone always says like having a good spotter is more important than like the spotter is typically the better shooter, because like their ability to like watch, trace, and make like corrections on the fly is a lot better. And this dude was good. He was fantastic. So it was like, for me, I kind of had it easy, because like he was really good with corrections and stuff, especially in like wind. So we would go, and what we did for our qualification, like at the end, was each shooter spotter team was lined up like 1 through 12, and then they'd be like, all right, team 1 target, and all the targets were labeled like, they're like, all right, so target like Bravo, which was like just a random target like way out, and then we had all of our dopes, so we knew what the ranges were from, like, we didn't know the exact ranges, but we knew what we calculated and figured out. So then they would go, they would engage. If they hit it, they would go to the next group, and then it'd be like everybody would shoot at target Bravo like the whole way down. If you missed it, you had 1 shot to re-engage. If you missed, you just like, it just like counted as a miss. So then we went down the whole thing, and then I want to say there was 15 or 20 targets. I don't remember exactly, but then by the end, like, I think I was the only person that had a 100% shot average. I think my spotter had like a 95 or something. Everybody else was floating in like the 80s or something. So I was pretty happy with it at the end, because like I didn't think we were like gonna like do that good, but like it was a lot of fun. Denver, I told him at the end, I was like, yeah, if I would have had someone else spotting for me, and like one of the guys actually failed, so like he went, and for his requal they switched spotters and they had him do it, and then the dude shot like way better. I was like, all right, I got really lucky having a good spotter.
So was there any doors that like that opened up, whether or not you went down them or not, but like because of that they're like, hey, you want to go do X and Y thing?
Not yet. I know like they did have me do like they had it set up that I was going to do like some of the training. I've done like some ACOG familiarization stuff with some of our guys, because our dagger teams that deploy and stuff, they only use the ACOG, but like as far as I know, none of them have been to like, and like for the most part itself, like you can use an ACOG and not have gone through that course, like 100%. But knowing your limitations and how to use it better is just, you're way more effective with it. And none of them have like, I don't think, done that course. Like a lot of those guys like are pretty exceptional shots as it is, so I don't think it would be very difficult for them. But as far as like range estimation and stuff like that, it's not like a typical thing that they would do. But for some of their like airfield security and stuff, I think, I mean, this is my personal opinion on it, but like I don't do their specific missions, so I don't know. I think it would be like a good value for them to know how to do that stuff. I personally would like to get, because we like, as far as like M24s, like the sniper rifle that the military currently uses, I think they also use like the M110 and a few other things, but basically the M24 is getting phased out and they're coming in with the M110, which is basically like, it's very similar to the M4, not very similar, the same concept of rifle, but it's in just like a bigger caliber and stuff like that. But, and it's just like super exceptional rifle, but that's like the military's like sniper rifle. But like we don't, a lot of security forces units have them in their inventory. We don't, because our mission doesn't necessarily require it. I think we should have them, because like, I mean, especially with the M110, like I think for like airfield security and stuff, it would be like way like a huge force multiplier to be able to reach out 1,000+ meters versus the M4 is 600-ish. You can shoot, I mean, you can shoot further, but like consistently, it's like so many factors play into it. And the 5.56 it's not a big round, so it's I mean, it definitely works for what it does. But
so is that 100% thing something that's going to sit on your record that you can use in the future, or is it
not? I mean, it's not, honestly, like, it's not like a big deal, like, really, or anything. It's just like, oh, I shot 100%. It's not like that's like sitting on like in like my training records or anything, like, oh, he shot 100% it. But I mean, it's not,
so it's like not, so like what if you like max out the PT test? Where would you rank that, like those two things?
I don't care about the PT.
Yeah, but
PT tests are easy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right.
It's it's not like
it's like something along.
Yeah, it's
okay.
not like it's sitting on my record like, oh, he shot, like whatever. But
what is the PT test in the Air Force?
So they do the 1.5 mile run, and I don't know what like is for like the age classes and stuff out of mine. For like I want to say it's like 17 to 29. I could be wrong, so no one quote me on that. But you have to do the 1.5 mile run and around like, Cole's gonna laugh at this, like 13:30 or something like that. And then you have to do, I want to say it's like,
that's just a pass, or that's
just a pass. Yeah, I think the maximum to score maximum points for it is like 9:12 or something like that. But then I forget what the push-up number is. I normally don't worry about like the low numbers because it's not like I don't really have to worry about missing. It's like I want to say it's like 36 or 42, and then sit-ups it's like 42 or something like that. But it's not hard. And then they do a waist measurement. I don't know if you guys do a waist measurement for your.
We have to get like height and weight, but our whole PT test is super different. They just switched it.
The whole
thing? They just switched it to. It used to be pretty much what the Air Force is.
Yeah.
Maybe exactly the same. I don't know, but now they switched it. Instead of the Army Physical Fitness Test, or APFT, it's now the Army Combat Fitness, ACFT.
Don't you guys like drag stuff and do deadlifts?
Yeah, I don't think anyone's. I just looked it up because I thought this was. Yeah, there's only one person that's maxed it out so far. Although that was as of October 2019, but still, it's like it's tough because there's things that test how basically like how much strength and power you have, and then there's other stuff that tests your endurance. Like you have a 2 mile run, then so you can't just be like a Taylor Foster.
I like that, yeah.
Because then you got to run 2 miles at the end.
So what was it? So there's like a 2 mile run.
Well, so that's the end. It starts with a deadlift, and I think.
Oh, Brennan's upset that we will circle back to this. Brennan's upset he doesn't get the deadlift for PT.
Yeah, it's like one of those hex bar deadlift things you do, and then.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then from there, the next one's like another strength power thing. Is like a weighted ball throw that you have to throw at like a certain amount of meters. And then you do hand release push-ups is, I think that's the third one, where like you whenever you go down you stretch your arms out basically and then bring them back in.
Like you have to like essentially take the weight off of your hands.
Yeah, it's weird.
I wonder what the
it's
thought
weird
is behind
it does kind of like work out like your shoulders a little bit more and like your back. I don't know.
I do think the idea behind it is so that people can't cheat it. I don't know how it is in the Army, in the Air Force. Like you see some push-ups that really like.
Yeah, that way you can't just be like doing this, You
so it's like you got to do like
down
a full. I'm assuming that's probably
what
the thought is behind it.
Yeah, because like then you have to extend and then go down, and then you can't just be like up here doing this.
I gotcha. Yeah, it seems like there should be a healthy middle ground.
Yeah, it also is kind of like, I don't know. I mean, I'm also just like weak, but whenever you're down and have to like lift your arms out and go out, like after you do that like another, I don't know, 30, 40 times, it's like you do get kind of sore there. And then you go from that is what is it? It's like a sprint drag carry, I think is the next thing, where it's like 6 events in one. Not really, but like like the suicides. I don't think that's like the right term anymore, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Whenever you gotta
whatever it is.
Yeah. Like shuttle run, I guess it would be what you call it.
Yeah, with an increasing distance.
Yeah. So you go down, like I think you run down 25 meters down and back, like a sprint, and then you drag a 90-pound sled down and back, and then you sprint down and back again. Then you run with 2 40 or 45-pound kettlebells down and back, and then you finish it with like a lateral like shuffle thing down and back. So by the end of that one, you're like pretty beat because. Well,
is this
especially
all
if you're
like back to back to back to
yeah,
back?
Yeah, you just kind of keep going. If you have like a big platoon, then you get a little bit of time to like wait. But yeah, after that is so I think I might have said this before, but there's like during that one, people lose some like muscle ability in their legs and kind of lose the ability to like dorsiflex your feet. So your foot's like running like angled towards the ground, and people all the time will like catch their toes and just face plant into the ground during that one. Yeah, I've seen that happen like multiple times now. And then let's see what, and then after that you do they're called knee tucks. So you get on like basically like a pull up bar, and you grab it with your hands like
in line with each other.
Yeah, and then you pull your knees up to your elbows, and you have to touch it. So that like works out your abs, I guess. And then you finish with the 2-mile run. So
I love that they threw the 2-mile run at the end.
Yeah, right.
After all that stuff, it's like like all these guys that like hated running 2 miles before, now they're doing it, and their muscles are all tired, and fatigued.
Let me see what the max on all these things are. Like, they're not that hard in and of themselves, I think, but the fact that you have to do.
Is the max set up, like, for example, with deadlift, like, by weight, you think, or is this just, like, straight max?
It's just straight max,
I got
yeah.
Brennan, now's your chance.
Yeah. I gotta switch branches just for that.
For those who don't know about the deadlifting campaign of Brennan Paden, I'll hype you up on this. So, I don't know what the heaviest you pulled was, but probably weighing less than me now at like 165 pounds. You're pulling like in the 600s on like a straight bar, conventional.
Low 600s.
Oh, yeah, only low 600s, so it's like, get stronger maybe? Dude, that was crazy town. I remember we did the deadlifting competition at our local gym maybe 2 to 3 years ago at Willow's, and we were in the same weight class, and I was going for my new max of, let's call it at best 425 at best. And so it was like, there was no point of me showing up to win knowing that Brennan Paden was in this, because it's not like, powerlifting isn't something that you show up here and like, you know, if I'm really on this day, like, you don't just throw on, like, I don't even know how to explain it, but it's not like you can be like, oh, I'm gonna go for first. Like, you're just gonna go for the max that you have in mind. I wasn't gonna be like, oh, today I'm going to put on 200 pounds to my max to outpull Brennan Paden in this deadlifting competition. So that was that, and Brennan took first that day, as you might think.
All right, so I pulled up the ACFT standards and like how you can max it out, and the maxes are, so Brennan's already got the deadlift by a lot. The max deadlift to get 100%, you need 340 pounds, and then SPT, that's that ball throw, is 12.5 meters, which doesn't sound like that much.
Like a behind the head ball throw?
Yeah.
Like a.
Yeah, I don't know how you would call it, but like.
In wrestling, you'd just be like, that's like, you're like, people will like drill their throws with like medicine balls, or like you work on like your back arch.
Yeah,
so
that's
it's like,
exactly how
on like, if you're on a wrestling mat, you'll do those throws with the medicine ball, but you'll like back arch like the whole way to the ground.
Oh, that's cool.
It's weird. Yeah.
Maybe you can teach me some technique.
Dude,
for that.
it's a weird feeling.
What's the weight for the medicine ball?
Or
does it not say?
Here. ACFT medicine ball throw. Like, it's not that much, but you grasp some, 10 pounds. So that's like,
okay, yeah. I was thinking like it was like 20 or 25. I was like, how do you chuck a 25-pound medicine ball 12 meters?
Yeah, it's really not that heavy. I mean, I didn't get anywhere close. I think I got like 8 or 10 or something. So it wasn't like.
Is it where the first bounce is?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep. And then hand release push-ups, you only need to do 60. There's time limits on these things, but I think it's like, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes. But you have to do 60 of those. And then sprint drag carry in 1 minute and 33. That was the only one I maxed out, actually. All the other ones I did not. And then the knee tucks, you do 20. And then the 2 mile run also, it's 13:30. That's not that bad.
No, what would that be, like a little under a 7 flat?
It'd be like 6:45.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So the only tough thing is it's like after you've done everything else. But
yeah,
it's not
I bet.
that.
I don't think I could do that fresh. That
post deadlift in general. Yeah.
Well, so you only have to do you have to do the max deadlift 3 times. So like if you wanted to do the 340 or whatever, you just do it 3 times and then you're done. But still, yeah, it does tire you out, I guess. But the sprint drag carry is what tired me the heck out. But anyways, so like like each thing in and of themselves doesn't sound like that hard. You could easily train, like, you know, to get the deadlift or to get that throw or whatever. But yeah, it's only so far. I think only one person has maxed out the entire thing. So I don't know. I think it's kind of cool. It adds a little bit more to it than just like push-ups.
I bet it's a lot more fun too, honestly.
Yeah,
because everyone dreads the PT test, like just because it's so boring. And I know like the Air Force has talked about moving to like a career field specific PT test. So like for like security forces, it would be like, I don't know, like drags and stuff like that, and running like with gear and stuff. And like I would assume they'd throw like a ruck or something into it too. But and the same for like fire department stuff. But like if you work in like finance or something, you don't necessarily need to be like, you know, dragging people like 40-50 meters or anything like that. But no knock on like finance specifically.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but you just don't need to be.
Yeah. It's not like you're doing that. I mean, we're not doing that day in and day out either, but it's, I mean, like, you wouldn't necessarily need to. So it's like,
yeah. I think there was some sort of inspiration for each of these events for the Army thing. Like, I remember them saying with like the kettlebells thing is like supposed to mimic like ammo crates you're running with and things like that. So I don't know. Or like the sled drag, like you're dragging like a soldier or something.
I think that's good though. As far as like functional strength, I think that represents it a lot more than like push-ups.
Yeah, push-ups, sit-ups.
Like, I mean, if you think about it, like, how does push-ups and sit-ups directly correlate to like, I mean, you're even like your regular fitness or like your like combat fitness effectiveness. I don't think like it's a good.
I know
the run I think is one thing.
Well,
but
even like the run, you're running in shorts and a t-shirt. Whereas like if you're ever actually running, I feel like you're gonna have a lot of gear on. You're gonna be carrying like a weapon. You know what I mean? I mean that. Yeah, there's not. I guess you can't really.
I know we always say in wrestling, like people will. Yeah, it almost becomes a joke. Or people will talk about how much you can bench. People aren't really talking about how many push-ups you can do, but your bench would be so meaningless in wrestling effectively because if you're bench pressing someone off of you in wrestling, you are pinned. Wrong. You have lost the match if you are doing a bench press.
Yeah. Jeez. Unless they're like on your back and you're like, you know, doing a push-up basically. But what, like, you know,
are you kind of screwed at that point though? If you're on if you're,
what do you mean? If you are on your back?
If they're on your back and you're on your stomach, and you're like pushing, there's no point in it.
Like, I think it's kind of over at that point. I don't wrestle, but I would assume you're kind of not in a good spot.
Maybe as a. Here's my pointer that I know will be taken and incorporated into the Army combat fitness test.
Let's do it.
They can bring in like some way to standardize it, like a brown belt in jiu-jitsu or something like that.
Dude.
And they like bring them in, and you have to like compete against them as part of the fitness.
So here's the thing: I was so sad about this summer because of coronavirus. We were supposed to be doing Army combatives, which is like basically jiu-jitsu, just like the Army's version of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we were supposed to get like the first level of training in it this summer. But because of coronavirus and you can't be like that close to somebody and like wrestling with them and stuff, they had to cut it out. I was like, no, that's like the one thing I really wanted to do here.
Dang.
Yeah. But so
have you gotten to do that like with Air Force?
We do like a decent amount. I think like I want to say it's like once or twice per year. Like normally we have opportunities to go do it for like it's only for like a week, like in at most at a time. But like I don't know, it's like a lot of fun. Like I feel like every time after I do it, I'm just like, man, I should really like join a jiu-jitsu gym, but then I just then I never do. I think it'd be a lot of fun, but yeah, I don't know. Every time we do it, I really enjoy it. But like at the end, whenever like the last one we did, like at the end of it, they're like, all right, so just kind of like they're like, if you know like other things, like that's cool, but like let's just try to like stick to the techniques we learned here, and then we'll just like see how you guys just like face off against each other. So we would just go and like we'd go and roll with someone for I think it was only like 3 minutes. And the guy that I went with, he was my supervisor at the time. I like went out, or my shift supervisor at the time, and like they're like, all right, who's next? I was like, oh, I'll go. And then he's like, oh, I'll go. And then he's not a black belt, but I know he's done like a bunch of jiu-jitsu before. He's done like Krav and all kinds of other like fighting stuff. He's a massive, super strong dude. He weighs like 40 more pounds than me. I was like,
you're like great.
Fine, but it was still a lot of fun. And then like he can, I don't know, it kind of like made me think about how much like size and weight. It does matter, but it's not like the only factor involved in it. Like once you kind of like know what to do, and he, for the most part, he was pretty good about only using techniques that we learned in that course. But like a few times, I was like, wait a minute, man.
Yeah,
like,
and
we didn't learn that. But for him, it's like it's not like he could just like turn that off or anything. It was just like, I do this. He's like, oh no, I'm gonna go here and do that. But it really is like chess. It's like, it's a lot of fun.
It's chess with intense physical consequences.
Yep, and painful ones.
And in fact, like the belt system for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is set up in a way, provided that they're like following it traditionally. It's supposed to it can be defined by for example, I won't talk abstractly about it. So for blue belt, that should mean if you are a blue belt and properly earned that belt, you should be able to submit someone, whether like by choke or some like ankle lock or like some sort of submission that like puts torque on their joint. You should be able to submit someone that is heavier than you but not trained. And it's like they have like from what I heard, I don't know if that's like from the origin story of BJJ or if it was through if you ever heard of like the Gracie family, that's kind of like the golden family of jiu-jitsu. They have talked about like what each of the belts should signify. I don't know if it's in their opinion or some like origin story of jiu-jitsu.
Right. Where does blue belt fall in the stack?
It goes white, blue, purple, brown, black.
Okay.
And I committed myself so strongly to going right into jiu-jitsu as soon as my final year of like wrestling ended, which was this previous year. And the weekend that it ended was like that following week we got sent home from school, like as in like full quarantine started to kick into effect with COVID, and I had never been able to find a place as of now that like has jiu-jitsu up and running. Thankfully my what was my roommate, he has since graduated, but he's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu and just like a combat sport assassin. Like he trained MMA growing up. He's a like multi-time state medalist in high school wrestling, national qualifier in college wrestling. He's an animal. He's like 40 pounds less than me and murders me when we roll in jiu-jitsu. I have never ever submitted him in jiu-jitsu, and we've spent a considerable time rolling, not just in the past year, but in years prior outside of wrestling season. And I have yet to ever submit him or even come close. I've never even had him in what could be a potentially submissive position. He murders me. He submitted me like hundreds of times. It's insane.
It's almost frustrating too, because you get to the point where like you think you're like, oh wait, this might be the time, and then they just wiggle out and they're gone. It's like, because the one course that we did, the instructor of it was like, anybody want to roll with me, like just like over lunch break? And I was like, he weighs about the same as me. I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll go roll with you. And it was hilarious just how much he just ragdolled me. Like I was literally just like a child that he was just throwing around. I was like, this is just insane. But
I had started going to a gym with Morgan Fuller, who was on the podcast before, in Pittsburgh, and we went to like a jiu-jitsu gym there, and we were getting into it, and then he moved out of Pittsburgh, and I was like, so I lost my gym buddy there, and then I started studying for like the boards exam. I was like, okay, I'm not gonna go as much. And then COVID hit, and I was like, damn, all right. So now I haven't been back yet, and I didn't get to do like the Army Combatives thing. So I'm like I need to get into it. But I was just looking up the Army Combatives stuff, and so that skill level 1 thing, which is what we should have gotten, was a 40-hour like 1 week course. So you don't get that much there, but it's kind of like not really like belts, I guess, but there's like different skill levels, I guess. And then skill level 2 is like an 80-hour thing, and then skill level 3 is like 160. But I remember somebody was telling me that like to get from one of the I think it's like 1 to 2 or either 2 to 3, you just like have to just stand there and get punched in the face. It's like that's just part of like, I don't know if they were just messing with me, but I think that is part of it. So I don't know. Apparently they have like all these modern army.
Like such an army thing.
I
He's
know,
like, all right,
right?
we're just gonna punch you in the face. Just deal with it.
Apparently
Congratulations, here's
like,
your level 2.
Competitions and stuff like that too. I don't know. That's something I want to get into, I guess. That'd be cool.
I know you hear horror stories about when people go from brown to black belt in jiu-jitsu, that like all of the other black belts in that gym, it's just like what in wrestling is called shark bait. So you stay in the middle for live goes, and everyone else is cycling in fresh, and they're going for like 30 to 60 minutes after. Like, I'm sure you've experienced this from like your 3-minute goes, like, and to contrast this with college wrestling, it's a 7-minute match unless there's overtime. Minutes are like hours when it's two people using all of their strength to essentially impose their will on some other person, in that they're like trying to contort their body using their technique and strength and speed and so on. Minutes add up and quite literally feel like hours. So to go for like 30 to 60 minutes with people coming in fresh that are black belts just beating the smack out of you, I don't know. It sounds like both not a good time and a very good time, in that you would have a fun story to tell.
I was mind
for
blown.
a long time.
I was mind blown by like the level of exhaustion after like the very first one I ever did. Like the first time I rolled with somebody, I was like, this. I could go out and run 5 miles and be less tired than I am right now. Like, I'm just like completely like exerted. Like, I was like, I'm in shape. Like, I would consider myself to be like a decent athlete. I was just torched, like, completely.
It feels like you're using like every muscle in your body at some points. It's insane. Yeah.
I'll get off my soapbox after this, but I always say that, like, as someone that like had run like a full marathon, and at what I think outside of professional like marathon runners was like a pretty respectable time. It in no way compares to like the hard wrestling matches I had. And it's not even like, oh, there's 1 or 2 wrestling matches that I'd say is harder. It's like every single match that goes 7 minutes, win or lose, I would say stacks harder than like the marathons that I've been in. Jeez. Like all of the crazy hikes. I don't know what it is, or if it's maybe like a kind of fast twitch muscle fatigue that happens because that's not happening in those distance related things. I'm not sure, but I get torched in wrestling.
I feel like you're the type of guy that enjoys that kind of like
absolutely
pain. Is. You're the type that should be like a Navy SEAL or something.
I wish I was that tough. In the room it almost like plays out to a bigger extent, as in like in the wrestling room during like college practices, and even to some degree, at least as PA high school wrestling goes, in the high school wrestling room as well, where there's just like a sense of pride that comes with that grittiness of like, okay, we're going to like beat the crap out of each other, essentially like a legal fight, all things considered, and just keep cycling in and out, especially when you're like the guy that's in the middle or doing things to that effect. There's a sick sense of pride that comes with that, where it's like you can't even have thoughts anymore, like conscious, like analytical chess-like thoughts, because you're like, it just has to come from muscle memory, because you're not only is your body fatigued, but your brain is just like so exhausted that you don't even have internal dialogue anymore. It's just like your body's just moving. So I think it's like why I like wrestling so much, because it's like you can just shut down the monkey mind for like an hour, and it's like I don't have to have any thoughts right now. It's like you're just in a flow state.
Well, whenever I listen or like read like David Goggins stuff, I always think about you, because it's like he has these like obsessions he talks about, and he talks about like how much he loves putting himself through like these painful things, like super long, like crazy long runs, or like the buds training in the SEALs. He went through that 3 times. It's like, I don't know, I'm like, oh, that sounds like Cole in like 10 years.
I don't think I got to tell you about this yet. Brennan and I were texting just a few days ago, and I told him I think our next stupidly long distance feat that we're aiming to do with friends who've been on the podcast, Tyler Hershey, and maybe we can twist Jacob Younger's arm into it, and our other friend Maverick Reed, who has not yet been on the podcast, but I'm sure at some point will twist his arm into it. But anyway, it's the full Standing Stone Trail. Actually, let me backtrack. Tyler was looking at like the list of fastest known times that are like documented on, I don't know what site he uses for like official fastest known times, but Tyler thinks it would be super cool to to show up on this list, to hold in FKT for some trail. And the Standing Stone Trail, which for all the PA listeners, which I would imagine is most of the listeners, are familiar with 1,000 steps. And 1,000 steps is like smack dab in the middle of Standing Stone Trail. And we've talked about this before on the podcast. I've done like half of this trail accidentally, where I did not do my due diligence and research. Wanted to show up and do like a 25 to 29 mile day, and I ended up doing a 41 mile day.
Do you ever do your research on these things? I feel like
it's more fun not to.
Yeah,
I bet he doesn't do it on purpose.
Yeah, because every time I'll hear of like you on one of these long distance things, I'll talk to somebody, like even like your kayaking trips with like Andrew and the other guys.
I'm notorious for being the person that's so under researched in what we're doing.
They'll be like, oh yeah, we're going on like a, I don't know, like maybe 10-mile thing or whatever, and then you guys will come back and like, how was it? Like, oh, we did 35 miles. Cole didn't plan it right. It's like, oh, okay.
It's part of the fun, but I can usually make a strong, convincing case to come along.
Yeah.
So for this FKT, the full trail is 83 miles, and the FKT is 29 hours, and we were like, dang, we could probably get that. The fastest known time.
Fastest known time. Okay.
So if you extrapolate that out to miles per hour pace, it would be a little faster than like 3 miles per hour or like 22 minutes per mile ish. So that's really not fast. That's not like a lot of.
But over how many miles is that?
83.
Oh my! I mean, that's not fast, but then it's like if you're doing 83
you're going
miles,
to be in intense physical pain.
Yeah, you're not going to
guaranteed. But
yeah,
it could be done, and we've had like over 40-mile days, which to be fair is half of that. We've held that pace pretty well, and we are convincing ourselves that if we train for this and do more research than certainly what I normally do, that we could crush this. Especially, you can't sleep. You just have to gut it out for 28 hours and some change. But
are you guys gonna do like that beer competition again?
Oh, dude! I'll bring this up as an aside. I wanted to. I'll talk about it. Now, I was gonna try to remember it for the intro when we give the old rigging it gear shout out. So we were on the old loggers path a couple weekends ago. Actually, maybe more than a month ago now. And Tyler wanted to do a video application to. I forget what brewing company it is. Sorry for forgetting whatever brewing company it is, but they're like paying someone like a $20,000 stipend to through hike the AT, and they'll like outfit them and whatnot. And Tyler's big into hiking. He's like, dude, it would be so cool to get paid to do what I love to do most. And he had this idea where he was like, for this video application, we'll average like a beer a mile or something. For like the full loop is like 27 miles and some change. So
yikes.
And also our friend Jacob Younger came along, also on the podcast, our homie that is the founder of Rigging It Gear, through hike the AT and so on. He didn't want to do this video application, but he just wanted to do the challenge of drink a beer a mile with Tyler for this hike. And Tyler was doing phenomenal at like staying very hydrated. Of course, he was inebriated, like obviously, but Tyler was taking it like a champ. He was like slamming Pedialytes. He was doing it right. And but Younger on the other hand just threw water out the window. And poor buddy Younger, this man, there was like a maybe like a 70-yard descent that was the steepest descent of the day. As it the sober person that was there, myself, it was tricky for me to do this descent because it was so steep. I'm like really tiptoeing down this thing. Younger would practically run. He would tumble for a while, maybe like 5 to 10 yards, and I'd be like, buddy, please just wait for me to get down to you. He'd stand back up, charge forward, keep tumbling. He just kept doing it to himself. I'm like, please, no, stop. And awesome. Once he got to the bottom and he wasn't dead, it was something that we could laugh about pretty hard. But we eventually had to call it quits at like mile 20 because Younger was just a liability to himself. We ended up going back like 2 weekends ago as sober humans and crushed it. But
did Tyler submit an application to that thing?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. That would have been sick though.
That's wild. That's something else.
Does the Air Force like drinking as much as the rest of the branches?
I believe so.
Yeah, it seems like all the military just loves drinking.
Dude, speaking of which, I would be an outcast in that. Like yesterday, I went to a buddy's wedding. They have an open bar, and my drink of choice at the open bar was a Capri Sun that I found, and like they had like a cooler for kids, and I was like, dang, I didn't have a Capri Sun in a while. So where I'm going with this is that I don't think I would fit in very well if you twisted my arm into the Navy SEALs.
Oh, I don't know about that. I think there's plenty of people that don't. Especially in the SEALs, they gotta, well, I don't know. I guess to celebrate stuff, probably. But I don't think they're, like, constantly drinking in the SEALs. You can't really keep that up. But when are you gonna join the military, dude?
Brother, I might have to let you down.
All right.
I think I have a job lined up, though, that I didn't really get to tell you about that we can unveil more later. But unfortunately, it will not be part of the military, I don't think. But that was part of the consideration, which I don't think we ever talked about on here. But there was like some genuine consideration of doing military pharmacy. I know there's a very black and white route that the Air Force sets up, but it's easier if you just start it when you're in college and you like come out as a second lieutenant,
right?
Which are my friend Maverick, who I mentioned earlier. That's what he's doing. But also, there's some paths in Army and in Navy, and those were the big two that I wanted to look into. I probably didn't give them their due research because I didn't end up going extremely deep. I found out where the recruiters and stuff were located for like the medical recruiters or whatever. I think I found too good of an opportunity to pass up that just aligns with my long-term goals and so on, but it was genuinely on the table.
Nice. Okay, well, hey, as long as you got something else going.
Yeah.
Brennan, what kind of stuff are you looking to get out of your future military careers?
Honestly, I'm not really sure right now. It's at this point I'm kind of, well, since like I have the job that I have now on like the AGR status, it's like I could continue and just like kind of like hit that retirement mark at like the 20 years, so I would have like, it's around like 17 left, which it seems like a long time, but in like terms of like how long I've been in like already, I say how long, it's like been like it's been like a little over 4 years, but like it seems like it's gone super fast. So I don't know if I'll hang it out for 20. I'm kind of leaning more towards that now, but like we'll see as stuff comes up and opportunities come my way, and I just say, yeah, sure, I'll do that. It's whether that leads me further into it or if I just trail off onto a different rabbit hole, but we'll find out.
So you're Air National Guard, you said, right?
Yep.
So what's like a day-to-day, I guess more like month-to-month kind of thing look like for you in the Air National Guard?
Well, so basically like we work like a weird schedule. So basically I just work like 12 like night shift, and then I worked like 12 hours, and basically like right now I just help with like, I'm not like in charge of our shift, but like I, in simple terms, like basically I manage our shift like every now and then from like night to night, and it goes between like different people, and then we have our one guy who's like completely in charge of the shift. But basically like we go and we do like our like, it's basically like resource protection, security, and we technically law enforcement does fall under our responsibilities, but for the most part like our base is pretty small, so there's not, and we don't have like housing or anything on base, so there's not like,
Where's this at?
in Middletown.
Okay.
But the so it's kind of like, it's pretty small, and like since there's no housing on base, it's not like we're dealing with people too much. And for the most part, like even on like day shift, like our like law enforcement capacity is like pretty limited, just because like people show up for work, they do work, they leave. It's not like people aren't like starting fights in break rooms or like stealing stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, some like every now and then like some stuff will happen.
So
but
that would fall on you guys to do the policing?
yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty few and far between though. I mean, I've had like 1 or 2 instances like in 2 years where like we've actually had to like take care of some stuff, but like for the most part it's like nowhere near like at the capacity that civilian law enforcement deals with, like not even close.
Yeah,
Okay.
especially now.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, it's like not even, as I don't even like calling it law enforcement because I don't like comparing it to that, just because it's not the same.
So how's it work? Does somebody like dispatch you to go do something like
Pretty
that?
much, like people can call, and like because we have like our dispatch center, you could call it, sort of, but just to like ignore like the other dumb acronyms we have for everything. But so basically we have our dispatch center, we have one person in charge, and then there's like all of our like random like posting and patrols and stuff. But
so when would they call you versus just calling 911 or something?
anything that happens on base, they would call us first.
Okay,
Yep.
gotcha.
And then as far as like for like medical stuff, like people would call 911 because we don't have like, I mean, there's people that are like EMT certified, and we have like our fire department guys who all are, but we don't have like straight EMTs that would roll up in an ambulance. So typically, if something like medical happens, like not too long ago, or it was like sometime last year, like someone had a stroke like in the middle of the day, so like they called like 911, and like, and then they got a hold of us, and then we knew that like they were coming, so we kind of like helped guide them through like kind of like the base and stuff, because like they didn't like know where stuff was, but
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
we have like a pretty like, we have a good relationship with like the like local law enforcement, like PSP and stuff like that. So it's
Okay, that's cool,
it actually flows and runs pretty well. So for the most part, we haven't had like any issues with like communication or like dealing with any like local agencies, but it's not too bad for the most part.
Is that all that training you got there? Is that all from your basic training, or is that extra stuff you had to do?
No, that's our extra stuff. So like we have, I think the Army calls it AIT. We just call it like tech school. So it's
okay.
like I had my like 2 months of basic training that I did back in 2016, and like every all the enlisted guys get like that same BMT, and then we have our tech school, which like, so whatever your like MOS or like AFSC is, or like your career field, you go and you do that training separate. For us, it was like 3.5 months. For some like other career fields, it's like 30 training days or something like that. For some, it's like 6+ months. I know like a lot of the guys that do like intelligence or stuff like that, or any of the guys in like the like Air Force Special Operations community, they like their pipeline's like 18 to 24 months long, because they got to go through like for example like TACPs or combat controllers have to go through like the schoolhouse for like TACP or their like combat control, and then they have to go and do like an additional bunch of like schools to supplement it, like they go to like Army jump school and like a whole bunch of like other stuff. Like the list, I don't know how many they end up having to go to. Same with like pararescue guys. Like there was a guy who, when I was down at combat arms school, he came and talked to us, and he was in charge of the pararescue. I don't know if it was the pipeline. I think it was the pararescue pipeline down there. And he was like, gave us a rundown on like what those guys like have to go through step by step, even after they finish that already ridiculously hard training. I was like, that special operations guys are absolute monsters, like all of them. Just like the amount of stuff they do, it's just like the mental like toughness and like how driven those guys are. It's something else, like for sure.
So this isn't exactly like the same thing, but you know, there's a lot of talk right now. There's like 2 different camps of one like completely defund the police, and the other camp is like, no, they need a lot more training, we should put more money toward it. I know it's not the same because you're not like an actual policeman or whatever, but do you feel like the amount of training that you even got there in the Air Force, do you feel like confident doing sort of jobs where you have to, you know, they do dispatch you to go out and do something like that? Or I guess I'm kind of curious, like, what your weigh in is on the whole thing. Like, do you think that more training is necessary, or do you think that kind of thing is what you're getting is enough?
So, typically, from my understanding, I know like there's a good amount of guys in my unit that are like civilian officers and stuff, and from what I've gotten from them, and I'm not a civilian police officer, this is just what I'm hearing. Like the first thing that gets cut from budgets
is training funds, like almost every single time.
Yeah.
Like, so if you're taking money from them, the first thing they're going to cut out, and it's the same thing that we do, is like if money's tight, like the first thing we're going to do is like, well, okay, we can't do this training, we can't do that, or like, and there's some other stuff you can cut out, but, and granted, like there is like useless spending, like, and like everywhere has it, like,
anything
there's
government
there's no entity or no like career or business that like there's not useless spending somewhere, and I think that's something that could definitely be looked into and fixed. But as far as just like saying, here's your budget now, we're going to take money from it, the first thing they're going to do is like, well, we can't afford to send guys to this training, we can't have them do this. But I believe it was, I can't remember who said it, it might have been Tim Kennedy, honestly, about running officers on a cycle of like, for this period of time you're training, for this period you're out in the field, like actually like doing like policing and doing law enforcement, and then you switch and you just repeat on that cycle, whether like you have 4 groups and it's like 1 group is training, 3 are working, and you just cycle it. I think that would be great, because honestly, like I've met a lot of officers that are, and trained with a lot of civilian officers that I personally thought were undertrained, like 100%. And it's like there's a difference between like oh, they should train more, and like the quality of training they get, because like there's some trainings that like it's basically just like, and I mean I'm sure you're familiar with this, like as far as like with the military, it's like check the box training. It's like they're like, all right, we have to get this task accomplished for you guys to be certified on this one thing, so all right, we're gonna do it, and then everybody just kind of lackadaisically like crawls through it, doesn't put much effort into it, and it's like, all right, cool, you're certified on whatever this one task is for the next year. And it's like, you can't teach anyone how to do something in a day or even a week and be like, all right, now you're proficient on this for a year. Like that applies to absolutely nothing. That's like saying me doing like a week of jiu-jitsu is like, all right, cool, now I know jiu-jitsu. I don't know jiu-jitsu at all. I know like 1 or 2 things that I remember from it, but I'm not practicing it daily. I think it does come back to that too. Like, again, I'm not like a civilian cop, but I think like like a lot of like the stuff that people are seeing issues with isn't stuff officers are doing every single day. So it's, again, it comes back to being undertrained, but like, where do you supplement in that more training? Where do you find the funds for it, especially if your funds are getting taken away? And how can you better execute, like making sure that everyone in your department that's strapping on a gun is properly trained to like use like less than lethals, use like anything. It's just like, and de-escalation I think is a big thing that needs to be improved upon, I would say, for sure. But at the same time too, like I don't think I'm the person to like be like, this is what we should do. That's just like my opinion on it, and which is,
well, I think it's good. I mean, you have like a little bit of a taste of what because of your experience in the Air Force, and you've had a couple things where you have to go and de-escalate or do whatever. Do you feel like your training that you've gotten, do you feel it like slip away over time, or do you think like you should keep getting?
I don't think anyone trains enough for anything. I mean, like, for example, like even like our like weapons and room clearing training, it's like not like we're doing that. Like, granted, some guys do a lot of that stuff on their own, but it's not like you're practicing room clearing with the guys you're working with every single day. So like the time comes to when you would have to, or like for example, even with training, even when you start training, it takes like a little bit to make sure everyone's like spun up, gets up to speed, and then after like a few practice runs through it, it's like, all right, cool, now everyone's running smooth. But no, like when I was in combat arms school, whenever we went to like the shoot house and did training, you had guys that were all like, for the most part, pretty trained and pretty proficient, and then like for us, we ran through it like pretty smooth for the most part. But if you get guys that, I mean, you have different experience levels with, I mean, anywhere, so it's, you're operating at the pace of your weakest link in the chain, which if someone's like super undertrained and lazy and doesn't want to put effort into learning, and there's people like that, I mean, anywhere, but do I think those people should get weeded out and either forced to like get trained up and do better, leave? 100%. I don't think there's any room in that chain for people who are ineffective, weak links, or stuff like that. Especially in like a law enforcement capacity. There's not room. I mean, are people gonna mess up and make mistakes? Yes, but there's not room for. There's not as much room for error as there are. Like, I think that is being allowed now. But if that makes sense,
yeah.
If kind of you're getting what I'm putting down.
So there's been a lot of talk of training police officers to do things like jiu-jitsu so that they can, de-escalate in a way that's non-lethal. And I know you said you got a little bit of training, like combatives type stuff. Do you think that was kind of like helpful for if you're ever going to run into a situation like that, or is that something that you're not like, you haven't used it that much that you'd feel comfortable doing it?
I think I would use what I would remember, but I mean, if I was going into like that would de-escalate something, ending up on the ground with somebody, you're already in like worst case scenario.
True.
Like, if you can avoid even taking it to that point, like 100, like
that's fair.
That should be avoided for sure. But like, they call it like verbal judo. Basically, is like being able to use your words and properly articulate the situation, how you can like bring it down. And I think that's really important too. But you can't like, there's people that just like aren't good at that.
Yeah.
Like, and their brains just like don't want to like put the words out so they can like comfortably do it. And then at the same time too, people have tempers, and then you're getting yelled at, and then all of a sudden you want to yell back, and then it's just like kind of like back and forth, and then it's like, I don't know, it's weird. I wouldn't want to be a civilian police officer for sure,
or be the guy in charge of figuring out how to
fix it, right?
Fix it.
But I think for the most part, a lot of stuff I'm hearing lately as far as like how they want to incorporate more training and stuff, I'm hoping like we'll start to see improvement. And I mean, only time will tell, but do I think just taking money away from like departments is like, do I think that's going to fix anything?
Yeah.
I don't see how it would. I don't really understand that thought process per se, but
yeah, I know someone that's much more qualified than me who has been pretty outspoken about this, kind of complimentary to what you were saying about Tim Kennedy, who, for those who don't know, was at one point in time an active Green Beret and UFC fighter, as like one of the most overqualified people to like speak on these type of subjects. And now he trains law enforcement officers and among other people. But anyway, it is Jocko Willink, who I have been kind of an echo chamber of, so sorry about that. Actually, I'm not sorry. I love Jocko. Jocko's the man. But he, who was like a commander of Navy SEALs and then came back and then like led Navy SEALs training on the West Coast, he was talking about how he thinks a good heuristic for how much people should be training, that I think he applied to Navy SEALs when they're in like active duty, at least when it wasn't like a high stakes combat scenario, was that they should be training 20% of the time, as a good rule of thumb.
Maybe it was Jocko that I heard that from, and Tim Kennedy. And
I think they're both in a good way pretty outspoken about it, where they talk about it in a nuanced way, and they aren't just like pushing some political agenda like, oh, if you have a problem with this, like, you're wrong and I'm not going to listen to you. It's very much not like that, and they are outspoken about there being a problem, but that it shouldn't be fixed by defunding, but rather funding more, especially at least funneling said funds into training,
right,
and doing something like training at minimum 20% of the time. And since that does take up quite literally a fifth of your time, that you would have to do things like cycle in and out, where some people are just in that training phase and then they cycle out, which is what you had alluded to earlier. And I don't know what that training looks like, but I would imagine that it would be like a constellation of something like jiu-jitsu and like regular firearms training and like the what you called verbal judo training, and things like that should, be one big cluster of how you de-escalate those situations and, keep the blood in the good guys, and if need be, get the blood out of the bad guys. But that being said, I also am not someone that's anywhere near qualified enough to speak from my own anecdotes on it, but it seems like it would, I don't know, it seems self-evident to me that the answer is not like let's give less money towards the training of these people that were having issues with them, not handling situations ideally, high stress situations ideally.
So the counter argument is that they'll take that money that if you defund police, you can take that money and put it towards social workers and like people that can go to the calls and de-escalate it in like a non-combative way. People that are trained to like talk down those kind of situations. I think they were running a couple like trials in different places, but I haven't seen how any of that's gone yet. But that's an interesting thing. I don't know how that would work either.
I'd be interested to see, when there is like kind of like some like trials that actually like results and stuff, kind of like what the result of it was, because
it's a little.
I think I could see situations where that would be beneficial, but I think I could also see a lot of situations where it wouldn't.
Exactly, and it puts a lot of stress and it just puts a lot on the dispatch center and the people that are getting. You get like a 1 minute 911 call, and say it's like people are fighting in the house or something. Are you like, then that's on their call whether they send a social worker or they send a policeman or a policeman,
right.
You know what I mean? Like maybe they think it's not a big deal, like the social worker can go talk it down, and then they get there and it's actually like somebody's got a gun or something. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of puts a lot of.
Was that trial kind of like they were thinking? Yeah, because I mean if it was like you partner social workers with officers and you kind of have
that'd be interesting.
Well, I would assume it would have to be something like that, because I can't imagine. I mean, there's no way for you to tell after like what Nick said, like a 1 minute phone call, like what you're walking into. Like you don't have a clue. So if the dispatcher makes the wrong call, it's like, oh, I'm gonna send the social worker in, and then it was totally the wrong call, and then something bad happens. That's why I have no idea like how like what their thought process was, how they would incorporate it. So maybe that's completely entirely off the wall and not what they were doing at all. But so I'd be interested to see.
I feel like that would make sense to send them with a police officer, somebody to kind of like keep an eye on the policeman, policewoman, and then also has the ability to add something to the conflict or to whatever's going on. It says so. There's a Vice document or Vice article. It says these cities replace cops with social workers, medics, and people without guns.
Replace is a strong word.
Yeah, so it's a pretty long article, but let's see if I can figure it out. So police departments say 10% of their contact with the public involves a person with mental illness and those with untreated symptoms. So that's where, those with untreated symptoms account for more than 1 in 4 fatal police shootings. So that's, I guess, part of the idea there is to send people with mental health problems. Homelessness is another reason they said, and then traffic. They said, why are armed cops in charge of traffic safety? So I guess so Eugene, Oregon was one of them that they did it, and then it says other cities that are exploring it are Olympia, Washington, Oakland, California, Denver, New York, Indianapolis, Portland, Austin, and Chicago. I don't see any results yet, really, but it looks like these are all ones that just started doing it.
I don't want to be too guilty of taking, things out of context from that article, because we don't know exactly how that's being applied and, what got filtered through some journalist from Vice putting that on there, and just our quick skim. So I don't want to do anyone like a big disservice, but it feels like there, for example, just picking one of the concrete examples that were given, just because someone that is involved with it, for whatever reason, a 911 gets called, and there's someone. First off, I don't know how they would know that like the person involved like has an untreated mental illness, like in a way that would influence sending. Like when they use the word replace, it sounds if like they're sending a social worker or something like that in place of
that's what it seems
some officer. So even if they could ascertain that, which I don't know exactly how they would,
if they even can at all, which
let's grant them that assumption. Just because they are someone that has an untreated mental illness, that doesn't mean it can't be escalated into violence. And then if you have someone that's not trained in not just de-escalating, but if things were to occur where you get involved in some violent scenario, like I don't know, it feels very unethical to send someone into that's not well versed in combat in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
Yeah, I can't really find anything yet of like how that's gone, but it'll be interesting to see whenever.
I would definitely like to see what the outcome of that is. I think it could work in some instances, but I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of room for I don't want to say error, but a lot of room for like just like unsureties that are like involved in that. But
yeah,
I mean, at the same time too, like I think something has to like get. I don't think we should just leave things how they are now, because I think obviously there's a problem with it. So going and trying things I think is good. Do I think that's the answer? I don't know. We'll see whenever the numbers come up, whenever they do, but yeah, I don't know. It's a hard situation.
It's not, and it's hard for three guys who aren't cops and social workers and stuff to weigh in on, but yeah, I don't know. I think either way, like you said, something's kind of got to give, so we'll see. But if we swing back to, so I had asked if you had any like major plans in the Air Force or whatever. Do you have any like schools or anything you want to go to in the military at all, or anything you've been eyeing up?
The one I would like to go to is I mentioned we had the Dagger mission on our base. I mean, that school I'm lined up to go to it eventually. As far as when, I'm not quite sure, but then there's a few other ones like we were able to go to air assault school that the Army has.
Okay, yeah,
so,
that's awesome.
I would like to go to that, and then
where's that one at? Is that in?
I think it changes every now and then.
Okay.
I think sometimes it's in Texas, and they actually had it at the Fort Indian Town Gap before too.
Okay,
but because I would like to go to that one.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
It's nice and close,
right
but we actually do have access to. I think we get like 1 to 2 slots for Army Ranger School like every year, and that idea has been tossed around in my head and stuff a few times. But
that'd be intense, man.
But I mean, since we're in the Air Force and we're a separate entity from the Army, what we have to go through what's called RAC, which I think stands for like Ranger Assessment Course, and it's 21 days of basically just getting that snot kicked out of you to see if like you're good enough to even go to Ranger School. And I think there actually is like a prerequisite to RAC now too, so you have to go do like a 3 or 4 day course. So it's like, I think I was told that we had one guy that went through it like a few years ago, and like after he did the 21 days of RAC, he still passed. When they're like, "All right, cool, you can go to Ranger School," he's like, "I don't want to."
Yeah,
like after he was just like, that was
yeah.
Rough.
You talk about sleep deprived, Cole. That'd be.
Yeah, I think the average they sleep is like 3 to 4 hours a night for 60 days. I think it's 60 training days or something like that.
Matt Walker would not be happy about that.
He'd be losing it.
Yeah, jeez. That'd be crazy. I guess that's probably something to try and do when you're a little on the younger side, I would think. But
I just kind of thrown that idea around in my head. I don't know if I'll actually do it or not. I know a few of our guys are interested in it, but yeah, we'll see.
I actually don't know what the path would be like if you're in the Army to get, like, I'm sure there's plenty of like pre-qualifying things you have to do to even get like talked about to be able to go to Ranger School. I have no idea what that would be. Yeah, like, if there's like a RAC similar thing or whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure units incorporate probably some kind of assessment they do to make sure they're not sending a guy who's like a total like dirtbag. He's like, I want to go to Ranger School, and then he goes and just he underperforms vastly and is like
kicked out right away. Yeah. Waste of time and money for everybody. Yeah. All right, so we should get into some of your like weightlifting stuff, man.
Oh, what about it?
Well, so you started. So when did you start, like, really getting into it?
I started going to the gym when I was like, I think it was probably like 15 or so. Like my older brother Garrick, he had been going for like a year or two, and he was like, "Yeah, you should just come in sometime." And like when I first went in, I did like, I don't even remember what it was. It was like a 3 day a week, like just like full body routine, and like I did that for like maybe a month, and I was like, this is kind of dumb. So I just kind of stopped going. And then a little later, Garrick found like it was like a really simple like strength program called it's just like I forget it's there's a similar one too. It's Strong Lifts 5x5. So it's basically just like a simple 3 day a week split with like
each day, like, you have your workout A and your workout B, and it's just like workout A is like 5 sets of 5 on squats at a given weight, 5 sets of 5 on bench press, and then 5 sets of 5 of barbell rows. Your workout B, 5 sets of 5 of squats, 5 sets of 5 of like an overhead press, and then 1 set of 5 of deadlifts. And then you do workout A on Monday, workout B on Wednesday, and then workout A on Friday. And then the next week it switches, so it's vice versa. Workout B on Monday, workout A on Wednesday, workout B on Friday. And then you just go back and forth. And after each workout, you add 5 pounds to each of the lift, which is like the really simple way they go about strength training, is called like linear progression. And I did that for probably like 2 years. And like that, like,
can you define linear progression?
so basically for squats, like, for example, it's so like you start at, the program recommends starting with like just the 45-pound barbell, but for most people that's kind of light. So like I started at like, I think it was like 135 pounds or something. So I did 5 sets of 5, and then the next workout I would do was on Wednesday for squats. I just added 5 pounds to it, and I would do 140 pounds. So, and then like, and it just keeps going. So it's like each week you're adding, because you squat every day, so you're adding 15 pounds a week to your 5 set of 5 of squats, and then you just keep going until eventually you hit a like eventually, I mean, you can't do that forever. So eventually, otherwise we'd all be walking around with like tree trunk legs. But pretty much once you hit like a wall and you can no longer do 5 sets of 5, you go to 4 sets of 5, and then 3, and then 2, and then after you do that, you go and you take like, once like you can't put weight on a certain lift anymore, you just take 10% of it off and just kind of like recycle and start again. So it's a really good like intro strength program. I like, that's normally like whenever someone asks me about like what strength training to do, normally the very first thing, if they're not like, I mean, it would be different for someone who like has trained before, or they have a little bit of a background, but like having like no background, like this is like a really good one to start, because it's all compound movements. You're getting like a good full body workout. It's like, I mean, with like heavy squats and deads, assuming they're being done correctly, you're getting like optimal like core strength, trunk strength. You're just like, it's just like a good way to like build muscle and build like strong functional muscle for like any average Joe. And like that was like, I did that for 2 years, and I benefited like pretty good from it. And then I've tried like weird assortments of stuff since then. But
so where do you go for things like figuring out how long to let yourself rest in between things, how to do stretches, how to do like technique, all that kind of stuff like that?
The internet.
Just go straight.
The internet is fantastic.
Because I feel like there's so many like mixed opinions out there though on the internet.
Like, oh yeah, 100%. And on like a lot of stuff, there's not like a right or wrong. It's like you try different things, find what works for you. Because like what's working for like one guy or like is working for Cole like might not work for me. So it's like you kind of gotta like weed through the grass a little bit and pick what you like and like what like benefits you. And then it's not gonna work for everybody. So it's like me recommending 5x5 to some people, like it might do nothing for them. They might have to do something that incorporates higher intensity or more volume or more frequency with like a given workout. But yeah, the internet, honestly, I tell people all the time, like any like even semi cool thing I know how to do, I learned from like Google.
Even
like
dirt
Google,
biking?
Even dirt, like
Right.
anything related to like motocross or like mechanics or all that stuff. It's just like the internet, YouTube. I like YouTube and Google. It's like that's what's like. It's all like it's such like a first world problem thing to say, but like I don't know how like, or like a younger generation thing to say, like I don't know how like people learn things like back in like the like back in the 50s. It's like, oh, I want to learn how to do this. What do? You got to go find someone who knows how to do it. You can't just be like, how do you crochet? Oh, that's how you crochet.
Yeah.
And then you can just like get the supplies, and then you can like learn how to do it.
Well, that's like last night. I was going to a bachelor party with a couple friends, and it was like way out Lake and Creek, which for people that don't know is like pretty like rural part of
The boonies.
Yeah, the boonies. And we had like a road name, but we didn't know like the exact. Well, I guess we knew the address and stuff, but we thought like, oh, we'll just see the road name because we knew it was out Lake and Creek. And we're like driving around, and we must have passed it like 2 or 3 times. And somebody was like, "Oh, this must have been how like our parents felt when they didn't have GPS, because you're just driving around looking for a road." And you're like, "Yeah, true." Like there's so much stuff like that. Like you don't. Like back in, even 30 years ago or less, like not everybody had a cell phone. You have to like plan where to meet up and like when to meet up. And it's like, if you're not there, you can't just text them like, hey, where you at? You know what I mean?
It's like I 100% take technology for granted, for sure.
Same. And it's only like, you know, it's just like exponentially growing too, all the technology.
Yeah, it's just like further and further.
It's like, what's there going to be in 20 years that's like, I don't know how people live without this. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll find out. The old simulation theories too.
Yeah, don't get me started on that.
To bring us back to I actually wanted to build off the linear training thing, mainly because I somehow like never investigated this. I could ask my mom, Google, but I didn't yet. So I'll ask you. How does that differ from when people say like progressive overload?
Pretty much, it's the concept.
I think it's the same thing.
I think it's two definitions of pretty much the same thing. I know like people always equate progressive overload to that old story, like the dude carrying the calf, and then as the calf grew, like he carried the calf every day. As the calf kept growing, he kept growing because his body had to adapt and grow stronger to carry the calf. So it's like that sort of concept of if you continue to like load your body with like more, it will have to adapt to accommodate for it. And I mean, granted, there's limits to that, but like that's sort of like the general idea of like progressive overload and linear progressions. It's really the same thing from my understanding. But
I was just looking it up. I don't even know what this must be like a Finnish website because it's .fi, but it says most of the movements you do for 3 sets of 5 reps each, anytime you can perform whatever, blah, blah, blah. So this is called linear progression, which is more or less correct. It's also called principle of progressive overload, which is very misleading. So maybe they are, like, used the same way.
Mm-hmm. I think they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
I feel like I apply the same thing to running. Like, when people ask me about marathon training or just wanting to build their distance up, I think a very simple place to start. I don't know how much this has been stress tested or even how I arrived at this, but I've played with this a decent amount where I don't want to give up all of my wrestling and my lifting, so I'm not really willing to run more than 3 days a week. And most like running things you look at will have you running like at least 4 days a week.
Yeah.
I'm just not willing to do it, mainly because I'm getting a lot of cardio still through wrestling, more often than not, at least 3 days a week. And because of that, anyway, what I do for those 3 days a week is I'll have 2 short days and 1 long day. So when I start, say you could only run at most 3 miles, what I would recommend you consider doing is do like 2 miles for your short day, then 3, then 2. Space them out like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or something to that effect. And then the next week add 1 to your long run, so it'd be like 2, 4, 2. Next week 2, 5, 2. And I would just keep adding 1 mile to my long. Mm-hmm. And you can surprisingly, at least for me, go like quite some time before you feel like you plateau and might have to hold constant.
Are you trying to keep the same pace the whole time? Like,
yeah, and if you start noticing that your pace considerably slows down, say, like there was a point in time when I was training for the Boston. Spoiler alert: I did not qualify for the Boston, which is a story in and of itself. Anyway, what I would do is I would keep adding a mile to my long run, and I would make sure I would stay at a sub 7 minutes per mile pace. And then eventually I would get to a point where it's like I fell back to like a 7:30-ish minute per mile. I was like, okay, I'm going to hold this long run constant until I get my pace back under 7 minutes per mile. And then now I'll go back to adding like 1 mile per week onto my long. I think that worked pretty well for me. And then I hurt myself and was on crutches.
Yeah,
and then
yeah, that'll do it.
that was a hoot. I ended up. Did we talk about this before on the podcast? I ended up like showing up on crutches to watch our friends run, and I was like, "Freak it! I'm gonna try to run."
I do
remember this. Then I'd like go from showing up literally on crutches to running like 21 miles, and I was going so slow. It was like a very fast speed walk by like the 21-ish mile mark, and the director of the race came by on a mule and is like, hey man, you aren't gonna finish before we like pack up. You have to come with me. I was like, all right. So it would have been cool if I could have crawled across the finish line.
Yeah,
I showed up on crutches.
I did it.
It wasn't as cool as the story because
That's
of
still
that.
pretty cool. You made it 20-some miles, though.
Yeah, I went right back on crutches after that.
Never would have guessed. Jeez.
Something I did want to switch to, which is still along these same lines of strength training, is you have become, to me, quite the ambassador of mobility. And I've done myself and others, when they ask me about getting into fitness, I've done a disservice to mobility and not recommending it enough, and especially to myself, because I just don't have a good regimen in place where I'm actually taking scheduled time out and have a plan to do different things for joint mobility. So could you kind of talk about briefly what the importance is of a good mobility regimen, and then how you would recommend implementing that, or how you go about implementing it?
So kind of what happened, I'll explain kind of what happened with me, which is how I kind of ended up where I am now with it. So all that strength training I was doing for, I wouldn't say I was doing dedicated powerlifting. It was more mostly functional strength training, and over time, heavy squats and deadlifts, even when done correctly, or the areas within your hips, your hip flexors, and then on top of that, doing running and rucking and stuff like that, I was putting a lot of load on my hips, hip flexors, glutes, low back, core, and all that stress and stuff, and then not decompressing from it, it starts to add up. Even if you're doing your technique on everything can be perfect, if you're not stretching or moving, it unless there's someone out there with a weird gene where they don't have to. I don't know if there's anyone like that, but you almost have to do it. And there's
in a way, you just get build up so much. Your muscles get so tense.
Yeah, if you think about it, you're just always getting amped and tight to lift, but you're never giving your body that time to decompress. And then over time, that starts to load up on your tendons, your muscles, your ligaments, and then the things that those all surround is your joints. And your joints are you can't in turn stretch a joint, but you can loosen and mobilize everything around it. So I started to have, it was never I never had it officially diagnosed as femoral acetabular impingement or hip impingement in the front of my hip, but I started to get in the front of my hip and my groin on my right leg an uncomfortable almost pinching feeling anytime I would try to squat or deadlift. And I started to notice it the tail end of my senior year, during soccer and stuff, as I was playing soccer and strength training at the same time, which was a mistake because running 5 times a week. And anyways, off of that tangent, so pretty much I started to develop that, and I just straight up couldn't perform in the gym at the level I could before. And it to me, it was really frustrating. And I was trying to figure out what the deal was. And I was maybe I pulled my groin or did something. I tried so much stuff with changing my technique, so it's got to be my technique that I'm failing. I tried different stance widths, turning my feet in, out, nothing would fix it. And then after a while, I just I didn't lift for probably a month and a half to 2 months, just because I couldn't perform well. And I was well, if I can't figure something out, maybe I just have to take time off. And then I went back in, and then it was better, but that feeling of relief from it was kind of short-lived because it just got tight again. So then I started doing some research and stuff, and I came across Kelly Starrett on YouTube, and he has a channel, or I don't know what it's called now, but he had a thing called the Mobility WOD, and basically he had all kinds of different exercises and mobility routines for taking care of joint stiffness, hip impingement, knee pain, ankle pain, and a lot of one thing that I found too, knee pain can that I had a little bit of trouble with back at the same time I was having trouble with my hip, was all due to lack of mobility in my ankles and lack of mobility in my hips. Because if you think about it, your hip is a massive joint, and I could be wrong, I'm pretty sure the glutes are the strongest muscle in your body, or one of them, and you take something with that much power and torque, and then you put
your knee joint in between that and then like the amount of load you're exerting through the floor, like with a heavy squat or something, you're putting a lot of like unnecessary torque and pressure on all of your joints by not allowing your body to flow and move as it should. So basically what I ended up doing was a lot of the stuff that Kelly Starrett puts out is,
do you know, as a quick aside, do you know like his background or anything?
He has his doctorate. And he's like a physical therapist, and so he's
gotcha.
His background's pretty extensive. He's treated like tons and tons of people. He's not just like some guy that uploaded the video on YouTube or anything. But so basically, a lot of his stuff is based around like banded joint distractions. That's not everything. He also does like a lot of soft tissue stuff, like with massage and things that you can like do to yourself with like either massage tools or like things you can like make like basic hand like day-to-day objects into like good massage tools. And pretty much I went on Amazon and I bought a giant rubber band that was like, I think like the weight level was like 90 to 175 pounds of tension. And then I just started doing a lot of banded joint distraction movements. And anyone listening can Google, if you Google like banded joint distraction, there's like the first like 3 to 5 articles are just like great explanations and studies that were done and how they can like help and increase your mobility and function. And like within, I'm not even kidding, probably like 3 days, I went from like not being able to squat like more than like 225 without pain to like I had like 405 on the bar, doing it for like sets of like 2 and 3 with like no pain or anything, like absolutely nothing. So it was like,
dang.
Yeah, and it was just from what it ended up for me being was, it was just an issue with like primarily like glute tightness and my hips. Basically like, because your hip joint moves on it really like 3 planes. So whenever you come up into like hip flexion, your hip inside like the acetabulum kind of like, there's like that roll slide glide motion that it has, and it should move around in a few different ways. It's not like it's just like a tight ball, tight socket, and it just moves like that one way. Basically what was happening was when I would sit down into a squat, my hip joints wouldn't like externally rotate, and what was ended up happening was my femur was basically just pounded into like the top part of like my hip socket. And like over time you can actually like tear your labrum just from like, and I was starting to have that concern, like, because after I googled it the first few times I was like, what if I like tore my labrum, like, because that doesn't heal on its own, you have to like get surgery to fix that. And literally like heavy stretching with of like my hamstrings, quads, hip flexors, and glutes for 15 minutes before I worked out went from all that pain I couldn't function to nothing. So I went from that to now all the time, like even like if I'm gonna go in and like do an upper body workout like bench, overhead press or whatever, I still go in the first 10-15 minutes I'm there, I'm mobilizing like my ankles, knees, hips, and shoulders, and like any joints that I'm gonna be using like that day. And same with like even like I don't usually do it pre-run because I don't like stretching a ton before I run. I've noticed that like that kind of just like doesn't like prime me up and get me going. But like post-run and stuff, I do it like all the time, and typically like, I experienced issues with like shin splints and pain like that when I ran before. But like in the past like 2 weeks I've put in like close to like 30 miles, which isn't a lot for like a 2-week period, but I went from doing practically nothing to that, and I've experienced like little to no ill effects. And I've still been like training in the gym hard, as well as like putting like a decent amount of miles in, I mean, for what I normally do. And like so far my body, like I've honestly like my body's been holding up great. I like kind of am tempted to use myself as an experiment and just sort of push the limit and see, because like there's that stigma of like you don't want to overtrain, but I kind of want to intentionally try to, and then just like stay hard on mobility, flexibility, and just like taking care of my soft tissue, and just see how far I can go with just like staying on top of that. And honestly, if you get like, for example, when I was down in Texas, the little time I could lift it at a gym off base, I was lifting at a Gold's gym. And anyone that's been at a Gold's gym, there's a lot of like, they're typically pretty busy, and then you see me with my giant rubber band walk over to the dumbbell rack, sling it up to it, I'm just there stretching for like 15 minutes. People are just like giving me like these weird looks, like, what is this guy doing? And like, then I'd go over and I'd squat, and the people would be like, is that little guy over there squatting like 400 pounds or something like that? Like, even the one guy came up to me the one time and was like, dude, how much do you weigh? I was like, I don't know, like 170 or something. He was like, I saw you stretching over there, I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was kind of weird, but like, that's pretty impressive. But so it's, I don't know, but a lot of people, like, I don't know what it is. Like, they'll walk into the gym, they're like, okay, I'm gonna squat. So they'll kick their legs around a little, maybe do like a few like lackadaisical like hamstring and quad stretches for like 5 to 15 seconds a piece. I'm like, all right, let's get under the bar. And I'm
yes,
like,
sir, I've been on that grind for years.
If I did that, I can't even fathom like how I would feel if I just walked into the gym and just was like, all right, let's do it. And like anytime like there was a kid in the gym that was friends with Trent, and he was telling me that like he's pretty strong, but like he was starting to have like his hips were getting uncomfortable. He said he had a little bit of knee pain. I was like, well, I can show you what I do for my warm up. By no means am I saying like you have to do it. If you try it and you like it, I was like, I'll just run you through it. It takes like 15-20 minutes before you squat, and then if you like it, cool, you can keep doing it. And I walked him through it, and after he was done with it, before he even got under the bar, he was like, dude, I feel like really springy and loose right now. And like he went and like deadlifted and did like, he like typically he like his best was like 405 for 3 or 5, and then like after that he was normally like smoked. He did 405 for 5, and then he backed off, did like 365 for a set of 5, and then 315 for a set of 5. He's like, dude, I feel like fantastic right now. And I was like, people gotta try this for like even like, I'm not saying that like giant rubber bands and banded joint distraction and like a lot of stretching is gonna like fix all of your problems, but like as far as like if you have like nagging like pain and injuries or anything, but like you got nothing to lose. Like if it fixes it, like cool. Like the one guy at work, he was having shoulder trouble for like years. Like he just like couldn't figure it out. I took a rubber band in, and then I worked on with I'll plug So Right. It's the like psoas massage tool, but you can also use it just about anywhere else. I basically used that along like his thoracic spine, his traps, his shoulders, and then
it's basically like, from what I've seen, I don't have one, nor have I used one, but it looks like foam that's like very, not foam that you can easily push in. Like is it hard plastic or is it?
It's
like,
injection molded plastic.
I got you. But it's almost like these spikes like sticking up.
Yep, it's like kind of like two rounded. Like rounded nubs basically, and you can use it for, it's called the So Right because it's their marketing target is to like use it for your psoas, which on most people that, especially people that sit a lot, just from sitting it shortens up the muscle, and if you're sitting all day long your psoas will get like tight and kind of like constricted. So basically they use it as a marketing for that, and it does work. I mean, it does work for that. Like it helped me, but like as far as for like just overall like massage for like anywhere, you can self massage basically your whole body for the most part, and it works really well. And I used it on this guy's shoulder and did some like light banded mobility for his shoulder that he had trouble with, and like his like range of motion like increased dramatically, like practically instantly. It was just because he never did anything like that. And I was like, what do you do for warm-ups when you go? And he was like, well, I normally just take a band, like move my shoulders around and then wave my arms around a little bit, and then I start lifting. I was like, that's just what everybody does. And then people, not everybody, but a lot of people do, and then people are complaining like, oh, I was squatting or deadlifting and now my back hurts or now my knees hurt. And I'm like, what do you do for mobility? They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, maybe start there.
Yeah, but I think you are onto something, even though it's an N of 1, or I guess with your coworkers and whatnot, like an N of several people. But you make a pretty convincing case that it's something that I have wanted to get more serious about, and because of that had dropped some money recently on some bands so that way I could get into it. I've still been like an absolute dirtbag about it, taking the initiative to do so. But the reason, like for me, that I think I'd really benefit from it, among other things like lower back pain and all that schlaz. But for example, when COVID hit and I couldn't do jiu-jitsu because I got screwed over like everyone else, so I'm not special there, but nonetheless couldn't go to start jiu-jitsu. But what I could do is beat the smack out of a heavy bag, and I knew that out on top of jiu-jitsu, like I wanted to hit like the if you aren't into MMA, there's kind of like 3 big pillars, and there's a different way to stack this, but like one kind of traditional way to hit 3 big pillars of like striking, wrestling, and grappling in MMA is to do, well, wrestling is just going to be wrestling, so you can dictate where the fight takes place, whether you're standing or neutral or on the ground. But then outside of wrestling, one common way to tackle striking is Muay Thai, so it's like a very all-encompassing, like, you can punch, you can kick, you can elbow, you can knee. Some people would do boxing, some people would do Dutch kickboxing, and so on. And then for grappling, people were pretty much always going to do jiu-jitsu. Anyway, so it's like, well, I can look into Muay Thai, and even though I can't train with other people, I can look through a library of technique videos and just beat the smack out of a heavy bag. And where I go to a gym, there's like a speed bag and whatnot as well. And I noticed that like on one of my hips, but specifically on my left hip, I just can't open my hip in the way that's needed for like a good roundhouse kick. Like to get to the height of the head, I can like rather easily on one side, and for the life of me, like there's a feeling of opening your hips that has to happen to like to be able to get your foot that high. And I just like cannot get it to happen comfortably on my left side, and I can like, whatever the right word is, essentially like not muscle it, but like, you know, just force it to occur. But there's like a feeling of a impingement with like every rep essentially to get it there. I'm like, clearly something isn't right, and I can't just sustain this long term without something bad happening.
And I would assume if I had to guess, your force output with that leg is probably diminished compared to your other one, right?
Yeah, and to be fair, I'm like naturally like someone that's right-footed, but it will be hard if you're not watching the video to like understand this. I'll try to explain as well as I can. So like if my hands are my feet and like my fingers are my toes, what has to happen to like have a good kick is, say I'm kicking with my right foot here, with my left foot, not like you're gonna start to come up on your toe, and when you finish the kick, you're like the foot that's on the ground, your heel should almost be like pointing like towards the target, because you will have rotated so hard, and you'll be like, especially what if you're round kicking, that should happen, because you're like you're opening your hips. So you can imagine if you're rotating to the point where like your heel is practically facing the target, and your kicking leg is coming up, your hips are very open, like as open as you can possibly get. So I think that is the issue.
Yeah, that would make sense. And I mean, I can't think of like a sport where like violent hip extension isn't a part of it to some extent. Like, because if you think about like during soccer, like sprints, during wrestling, I mean, even like the little bit of experience I have with jiu-jitsu, like being able to extend at the hips and use like your hips for like to move them if you need to, it's like,
yeah, even just like keeping people on guard,
right?
Like,
yeah, it's just invaluable. And so I mean, and then if you think about like Olympic athletes, like everything they do is based around extremely violent hip extension. You're putting all that stress and load on the hips and the muscle groups around them, and then you're doing nothing. Even if it's not nothing, even if it's just not a lot for your body, it's the wear and tear is going to accumulate, and then eventually you're going to get to the point where you start to notice pain, discomfort, and stuff like that. Like the easiest way to explain it for like just like an example is like, imagine driving your car and like driving it hard. Like a lot of people treat their bodies like pretty harshly with like with exercise and stuff like that, and then you just did nothing for it. You don't change the oil, you don't check the tires, you don't check the coolant, you don't do anything. You just beat the snot out of it, hardcore performance all the time, and then you do nothing for it. Like, how long is your car gonna last? Probably not very long. And even if you do a little bit of maintenance, it might decrease the effects a little bit, but over time you're still gonna notice these issues and problems. And so you kind of got to like find that balance and consistency with mobility, like what works for you, and then you just gotta get after it. I mean, I do it probably
a minimum of like 4 times a week I'll do like a dedicated like 15 or 20 minutes just to really spend on like my like the area around my hips and everything, and then just like most of I'm pretty much all my primary joints and everything. But I've noticed like a drastic improvement in the last probably year is when I've been doing it the most consistently, as far as I didn't get out a protractor and measure like in degrees my like my like improvements in like hip flexion and extension, internal and external rotation, but it's vastly improved like by far. And could I have like accomplished that without a giant rubber band? Probably. Was it easier for me to do it with that? I think so. And I think for most people it is too, because it kind of aids in joint health a little bit. This is granted, this is what I read about it. I don't know if like this is like medically what's actually happening, but basically the idea is you're applying like with the band. Well, for one, the band does a lot of the stretching work for you that you don't have to statically hold yourself, and then 2, it's applying like a vector force to your joint. So it's basically separating your joint surfaces from like the ball to the socket and allowing like basically like more room in there, because like over time when like your muscles get really tight and everything, it's really constricting and driving that joint. And if you just have constant like tight tension on that joint, it's going to be putting a lot more wear and tear on it than if you're loose and then everything's like mobile and moving smooth. So basically, I believe it's the fluid in the joint, synovial fluid, or something. And pretty much the idea is if everything's too tight over like periods of time, it can actually force that fluid out, and then your joints move like less effectively. And then by using a band, like opening space up in that joint, and it's not like you're like opening it up a lot, but it's enough that you can actually like there's more room for fluid, and then your joints ideally will move freely with more, I guess, like lubricity, I guess you could say. Is that actually that's what I read on like 2 or 3 articles. That was the idea behind it. I don't know if like you guys could weigh in on whether or not that sounds like that's legit. A thing.
I mean, yeah,
but
I don't know if you're just gonna have like, you know, like just the act of you opening it up, you're not just like making a bunch of fluid that's gonna flow in there right away. But I think over time, if you allow more space in there,
consistently, like I wasn't like the way they explained it. I think that's kind of what they were getting at. But I mean, too, like I've noticed definite improvements in just how my joints feel and mobility. I don't have aches and pains in like my ankles, knees, and hips or anything anymore. It's my posture's better, because like if your hips are really tight, you're gonna start to have issues with like, and especially if you sit a lot too, and you're an athlete at the same time, like your hips will get tight. Once your hips get tight, your lower back starts to get tight, and then all of a sudden you're walking around with like an anterior pelvic tilt or something. You have those like that Donald Duck posture where your hips are rolled way back, and then you're standing there saying like, oh yeah, I did deadlifts and stuff, and now like my back hurts. And I was like, well, maybe your back hurts because you're walking around in extension all the time. And I think that's like a thing people don't consider a lot of times. And I like even people that don't work out, like people that just like work in a chair and sit a lot, like they'll complain about back pain and stuff, but then you look at their posture and they're just out of alignment. And it's just like, strengthen the muscles that are weak, stretch the muscles that are tight, balance out your body. And I think 9 times out of 10, unless you have like existing issue, I think you're gonna feel a heck of a lot better. But that's my like soapbox of like mobility and everything. But I have yet to like have someone try it that didn't experience like positive benefits from it. Like no one's done it so far that I've talked. I've probably like 10 or 15 people total I've like walked through it, and like not a single person so far has been like, I feel worse this way, I don't want to do it. Everyone's like, wow, this is really great, I should do this more. I'm like, yeah, you probably should.
2 things. One will genuinely add to this. I'll start with the stupid thing that came to my mind.
Great.
The stupid thing is like the thing for me that I have that I've made recommendations for that like I've yet to see it not work, and I like can't believe the anecdotal evidence I have on this. Like 100% efficacy is when people get hiccups. I recommend that they have like a bolus of peanut butter. You can't wash it down with anything. You just take a big old spoonful of peanut butter and you swallow it. You don't wash it down. The efficacy of removing hiccups that I have seen is mind-boggling. And I feel the same. I feel like there's a parallel here.
I'm gonna have to try that. I actually hope I get hiccups at some point
right.
today, just so I can give that one a go.
Please, if anyone listening ever gets hiccups, please try that. Let me know, at least if it doesn't work. So I'll stop recommending it. But I feel so deeply convinced about that recommendation. Anyway, I digress. What I was saying is, I think at least the only, maybe Nick can speak to this a lot more fully than I can, but places where I've seen a joint distraction of sorts implemented into medicine just so far. I'm on a trauma rotation right now for pharmacy at a GMC in Danville. And for people that come in with spinal cord injuries, a kind of common practice, if you think of, especially when there's a problem where, like if you're imagining my, again, sorry for people listening and not watching the video, but if you imagine like my two knuckles back to back are your vertebrae, if something happens where compaction of the vertebrae occurs to an extent where like the discs just slip and like push past each other, like you're gonna have an impingement on the spinal cord. So they'll do something called traction, which sounds like effectively what you're talking about with joint distraction with band exercises, is where like they'll attach weights essentially to someone's like head, and they'll hang weights off of the bed, so it's like pulling like their whole spinal column out to like stop impinging the nerve cord. I don't know. It seems analogous.
Yeah. It sounds like it's really similar. I wonder, is that like kind of the same? Maybe not the same direct comparison to like what are the inversion tables? Is it sort of similar to that?
Certainly similar in that you're allowing
just like a different method
decompression
of
to occur. Yeah, I would imagine, especially with like within the realm of critical care, since I'm like usually in like the trauma ICU, can't hang those poor people upside down.
Well, that's okay. That's a good point.
But I don't know. Granted, I'm not in the physical therapy space, but I've heard some. I have my own anecdotes which go against inversion tables, but even outside of my own biased perspective, it seems like there's just a whirlwind of like mixed evidence with inversion tables. I'm curious if there's any like diagnoses that like really warrant using an inversion table, but it seems like there's some people that it can really do more harm than good in. I'm one of those people. There's also people that swear by them, so like to be fair, there's people that will like strongly assure you that it's the reason that like they can walk today. So I don't know, but for me, I've have like a bulging disc in my lumbar spine, have for a long time. It's been like a big nuisance during wrestling, especially because you can't like really predict movements quite as well. Like when you're lifting, I know what movement I'm about to put myself through, whereas like you go through like a scramble in wrestling, like there can be really quick twists and turns, and because of that there's been some very debilitating neuralgias that have occurred like middle of a scramble, and then like my legs just give out, or like something crazy, and because of that I tried an inversion table multiple times. This occurred. I stopped after like the second time in a row this occurred. I'd like re-invert, and as soon as it doesn't hurt when I allow it to decompress, immediately upon re-inverting and bringing compression back onto my spine, the nerve pain will occur and my legs will like give out, and it's like a super sharp stabbing pain. Same thing will occur if I hang from a pull-up bar and I don't contract my lower back musculature and really just hang for a while. I can do pull-ups and it's fine because the tension that occurs in my lower back musculature keeps it from keeps my spinal column from decompressing to like an extent where when I drop back to the ground it doesn't hurt. But if I just hang, as soon as my feet touch the ground and there's a little bit of compression that occurs again, it will just like boom, I'll fall over. It's like a super sharp pain, and I can't I'll just drop to the ground. Fun stuff, dude.
Yeah. It's kind of similar to a lot of people that have like chronic low back pain, is their vertebrae will like kind of slip a little bit apart, and then the back muscles will really spasm to try and hold it there so that like it doesn't slip out more, and then that like muscle spasming is really what's causing people a lot of pain. And like there's people that live with that like all the time just because there's not much you can really do about it. So, I mean, that sounds like kind of a similar thing to what you got going on.
Right.
So hopefully you don't develop chronic low back pain.
I hope so, dude. Well, I mean, I hope not. Versus, I hope so. But yeah, it's sketchy, and there's so little you can do for it. Especially, I'm going to come at it through the lens of like pharmacologically.
I guess you could
so
give like
little
muscle
you can
relaxants
do.
or something.
Yeah, which is like the last thing I want to do. Pretty much every traditional muscle relaxant is like a certified zonker, and you're like gonna be tired and in a haze. So it's like I really don't want to do that. Baclofen, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Jeez. I don't know, man.
But anyway,
what do you think?
I think when I think of Brennan Paden, I think of many obsessions that like there's so many realms we could go down into, like the coffee realm, where you're probably know more about coffee than any other person that I know. But maybe we can even throw energy drinks in there. And then there's like the guitar playing realm and the dirt bike realm, and then there's like the archery realm.
Oh, yeah. There's so much.
There's so many really deep.
5-hour podcast.
So I think we may have to make this a part 1 of a tentative 2 down the road, where we get to dive into the other. Areas of study of Brennan for the sake of Nick and I getting back to Pittsburgh for you and me to Wilkes-Barre tonight. But
forgot about that.
I had a hoot, dude, and I'm glad you came on. I hope we can sucker you into coming back and talking some more.
Sure. It was fun. Let me know. I'll definitely.
Jack of all trades, dude.
I like a few things, but.
And you're also the, I was thinking about this on the way here, our third pair of brothers that came on. We're just like knocking out because we got the
Taylor Taylor and Caleb, and then
the
John
Hershey's.
and Tyler, and now you and Garrick. That's cool stuff.
Setting it up.
Insights of All Brothers.
Yeah,
Insights of All Brothers podcast.
Yeah.
But, alright everyone.
Yeah, we'll see you later. Thanks for coming on, Brennan.
Right, sure thing.
Alright everyone, thank you all for tuning in. Please track us down on social media. Our Facebook is Insights of All Trades. Our Instagram is @InsightsOfAllTrades. Our Twitter is @IOAT Podcast. And you can find us on Gmail. It is insightsofalltrades@gmail.com. So please just send us in your insights. It would mean a lot to us and a lot to everyone else. Meaning, send in any tips or tricks you've learned through your trade or your passion that you think everyone would benefit from knowing. So until next time, adios.